Welcome back, everybody. This is Brother Mean here. Today we're doing a series of videos. This will be the first of hopefully many. This is because I'm going to go get a job, hopefully, anyway. And because of that, that is going to change how I do videos in the future. Not terribly much. It's just not going to be able to put in like an 8-hour day tinkering around with builds and stuff like have been doing in the past couple of years. So let's actually talk about what we're going to do. So because I am using these two new mods, the Eldritch Arcana mod and Call of the Wild, which have added more classes as well as feats and of course spells, I decided that it's probably a good idea to revisit both of them, talk about the spells for each individual class, talk about what spells I like, how I might use them, what's wrong with them if ones are broken or borked in some way where they're not doing what they say they're going to do, but they do something slightly different. So we're going to break them down into categories. And what I've decided to do first is the War Priest, because it's something new to me. I like my subcasters. For those of you who ever follow my videos, you know that I love my Magus. War Priest kind of feels like the watered down version of a cleric, and therefore kind of badass in the fact that they get to be basically a fighter slash cleric hybrid, so to speak. They can get all the way up to level 6 spells. Of course, they don't get cantrips because they're divine casters, so they get orisons. So we're going to talk about level 0 spells all the way up to level 2 today. Then we'll do 3 and 4, level 3 and 4 on the next video, then level 5 and 6 on the video after that. We'll basically expand to another class, probably Inquisitor, or maybe I'll dip back into Magus just to see what new things are there. And the reason we're going to do these in the subcasters first is because in many cases you'll see that, for example, like a wizard or a cleric or a druid, they'll have subcasters like these. War priests, for example, are like clerics, which means there's going to be a lot of redundancy. So this allows me to cover war priests. When we get to clerics, I can say, oh, go see my war priest videos for these spells. I can talk about them and show that the clerics have them, and I can say, we already talked about that, go see this video. And then I don't have to repeat myself too terribly much. I would try to keep these videos under 2 hours apiece, let's say, in theory. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. So let's first talk about what we're going to do for each video. Briefly, in this video, we're going to talk about meta magics, just to talk about how they've added more, of course, because of our new mods, as well as the originals that came with the game. We'll talk about what they do, which ones I like, and as well as coding systems that I do here in this video for my spells. As you see here with the orisons, you see these little letter codes next to them. The 4 spells that you get for infinite use are guidance, light, resistance, and virtue. The code right behind it is the school that it came from. So we have divination for D, V, capital letter V is for evocation, and that's because E was already taken for enchantment. A for abjuration, lowercase t for transmutation, and the reason it is a lowercase t is because I'm old school and I write stuff down on a piece of paper. So when I do a lowercase t, I can easily distinguish it from a capital T or a capital I, which is, of course, illusion, and I don't want to confuse them. So it's pretty obvious when it's a lowercase t that it's not an illusion spell. Now, of course, if I look at the spell, I can already tell that too, but again, I get tired, and sometimes, it's just nice to have a nice coding system. You'll see other things as well as we get into each of the spells from level 1 on up, where I've included things like if the spell is underlined, that means that there's a saving throw. If there's an asterisk right after the name of the spell, the asterisk implies that there is no spell resistance for that spell, which is awesome. Notice, just to track a little bit here, the underline is not necessarily just a saving throw. Another example would be is if there's some sort of skill check or an ability check. It's similar, it's not the same, but basically what I'm denoting with the underline is that there is something about this spell that has a chance for success or failure tied to it, if you will. Let's talk about our meta magic. So you can see the ones that are underlined in this list are the ones that are from these new mods. In many cases, they're redundant in that Eldritch Arcana has their own intensified, for example, and Call of the Wild has its own as well. So you'll see 2 when it comes to picking them if you've uploaded both of these mods, which is what I'm doing. I think they both work. I haven't tested them both on all these lists, and because there's many that I just don't use. But we're going to talk about each of them. First, notice the meta magics are feats, and we're talking about the fact that there's level shifts. As you can see here, if you increase a spell using one of these meta magics, that means that the spell slot you're using is a higher level. That means, like, let's just take Fireball as a solid example. It's a level 3 spell. If we try to, say, intensify it, as you can see here, intensified is one of the meta magics we can use on it. It is a +1 level shift, which means instead of it being cast as a level 3 spell, to get the intensified version, it had to be cast at level 4. The downside of all these is, while that's nice, and presumably something you wanted to do, they do not increase the DC check of the spell. There is an exception to the rule, we'll talk about it last. But most of these do not have that ability. There's a way around it too, depending on the type of class that you play. For example, if you played an arcane bloodline for a sorcerer, or the magus, which is again one of my favorites, sorry, the Eldritch Scion to be specific, they have an ability that unlocks with them, I think early at level 1, where if they meta magic anything, with the exception of Heighten, which again is an exception to the rule, any upgrade, whether it's a +1, +2, or +3 or higher level shift, it gets a +1 to the DC check. And that's not amazing, but it's definitely something of note. Otherwise, normally these do not get any kind of bonus besides what the meta magic does. Okay, so let's go through the list for the +1s first. So extend does nothing more than just double the duration of a spell. You'll see that this works for not only a lot of your buffs. Not every spell is perfect. So ones that'll have like a round duration, sometimes you just can't extend them. Sometimes you'll see that it has an effect, but it'll only last for a round, and again, sometimes the game will not let you extend it. So there's always the caveat here that some of these things are either broken, or maybe they were never intended to work for that spell for reasons that just befuddle me. But extend is a solid pick. It's one of my favorites. Reason for it is, again, I can use it for buffs so that lasts longer, especially early game. Being able to cast a spell that only lasts for 5 rounds and now it lasts for 10, you can see the appeal. Other spells that again are good buffs that are like a minute per caster level suddenly become 2 minutes per caster level. Suddenly it lasts you for the entire dungeon with just one casting. You can kind of set it and forget it, so to speak. It also works because it's not just the duration of your buffs. It also works on many of the spells that have a duration based on, like they're confused for this long, or they're paralyzed for this longer. You get the idea. So again, extend is extremely versatile. Doesn't work on your instantaneous type damage spells because again, there's no duration. It's just like Fireball, for example, you can't extend it. It just does damage and it's over. Next one, Intensify. This was one that was missing, hence the underlined. This was one that people that played Magus, like me, on the forums, were up in arms over the fact that the developers never released Intensified. It was the thing that was missing, and I had no idea why, because I never played a pen and paper version of Pathfinder. And I was like, what's the big deal? You have the ability to upgrade your spells with like Empower and Maximize, which is other ones we're going to talk about later. But Intensified was the bread and butter of a Magus build, and I couldn't understand why, because I didn't really understand what they were saying in the forums. Then they released it using these mods, and I'm like, oh no, yeah, now I see why. It's only a 1 level shift, so that's money. And then the second is it literally allows you to increase your caster limit, if you will. Let's explain. Go back to your Fireball spell. It does 1d6 of damage per caster level, and it caps out at caster level 10. What does that mean? It means when you get it, your level 3 spell is probably, if you're like playing, like say, a sorcerer or wizard, you're like level 5 or higher. So you're only doing like 5d6, maybe 6d6 of damage. Okay, that's no big deal. And then after you get to level 10, you cap out, which means that it stops. It goes up to 10d6 and now it's finished. It never gets any better. It doesn't matter if you're caster level 10, caster level 20. So what Intensify does is it raises the caster level limit from the 10 up 5 more levels. So caster level 15, assuming you have that many caster levels, of course, means a good Fireball spell at 15 on up would yield a 15 d6 of damage. You can see the appeal here. And it's only 1 level shift to do it. But the reason that Magus love it is we use Shocking Grasp as a staple. It's not the only one, but at level 1 spell, that does 1d6 of damage per caster level, caps out at level 5. So what Magus will do was they will literally intensify it to do 10d6 of damage by level 10, and then they'll still channel it through their weapon, and when it crits, which is what Magus do, when those touch attacks crit, because they crit when the weapon crits. When the weapon crits, it crits, and now suddenly the spell, instead of doing 10d6 of damage, can do 20d6 of damage to the target, plus of course your weapon strike. Again, you can see the appeal. The only real thing to mention about Intensified is there are some times that it's fiddly. There's nothing wrong with the spell. It's usually the interpretation. People think, like, oh, I see Fireball that does 10d6, now it does 15d6. I see Shocking Grass that does 5d6, now it does 10d6. So obviously it's just adding 5 more d6, right? No. I'll give you another example from a level 1 spell called Ear-Piercing Scream. Okay, that one does 1d6 of damage, minimum 1d6, per 2 caster levels. So If you're caster level 10, which is where it caps out, you can do 5d6 of damage. If you intensify it, it does not suddenly do 10d6 of damage. It does 7d6. Why? Because if you take that caster level 10, add 5 more caster levels to it, and again, assuming you're level 15 or higher, that's a 15 caster levels. Divide that by 2. Remember, it's 1d6 divided by 2 caster levels. So 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. They round down, and now it's only 7d6 of damage. So again, it's doing what it's supposed to. You're just kind of interpreting it wrong. So that is a little fiddly, but it's still good extra damage, and it's, again, reasonably cheap. Another one of my favorites. Next one, Reach, another one of my favorites. You're noticing a pattern here. They're very cheap, so these are nice ones to get. Reach, all it does is it increases the range of your spell. Now, be clear on the ones that it doesn't work on. If it's a personal effect like Shield spell, where you don't need, it's not even a touch buff. It literally is only on the caster. You can't reach those. If it is a touch spell, whether it's a touch attack or a raise spell, almost in every case you can shoot it farther. Touch becomes short range becomes medium becomes long. Long you cannot reach. Same with spells that are beam spells is what I call them. They're not raise spells. I think of lightning bolt, something that is a narrow cone. And cone spells as well can't be reached. Okay, AoE spells can be, think of fireball, but only if the range is already under long. This is why fireball can't be reached, because it's already an AoE spell, but it's at long range. Okay, so there's nothing you can do with some of those, but there's some utility here. Again, reach spells work a variety of ways, and again, one of my favorites, especially on a dex-based build, especially if I'm trying to do something like a Raycaster build, where I'm trying to stay at distance and laser-fingered kill everything, for example. Elemental, there's 4 of them. If you go with Call of the Wild, there's only 1, sort of, if you go with Eldritch Arcana. So you'll see 5 in your list of feats when you're leveling your characters up. For Call of the Wild, it's for each individual one. So are you trying to do acid damage, cold, fire, or electric? For the other one, it is 1 feat, sort of, in that it's a pull tab. Like you click it, and it opens up the list of all 4, and you get to pick which one you want then. So you can pick it multiple times, but it's basically the same difference. But what these do is they take any damaging spell, more or less. It doesn't even matter if it's an elemental damage, but it takes the damage and suddenly converts it into whatever element you pick with this feat. So let's say you wanted to have acid fireball spells. You go elemental acid, cast it on a fireball spell, to add a bit of magic to it. So now it's a +1, so it's a level 4 spell. Instead of doing fire damage, it does acid damage. And I believe, I don't know this because I haven't tested it yet, but I believe it really does change the category for acid. Why is that important? Not just that it does acid damage, that clearly works. It's for other things in the game. That was vanilla version. It was kind of worked in this way. There's some special classes that have the ability to turn spells into specific damage types. They take the elemental bloodline, for example. They can take, say, a fire elemental can make snowball spells that are of fire, or acid spells that are on fire, but they're still considered acid spells. Why does that matter? It depends on if you get, say, elemental focus, greater elemental focus as feats. Like maybe you want to be the fire guy, so you go elemental focus, greater elemental focus, both in fire, and then all your fire spells get a +2 now to their DC check. You can see the appeal. And if you can turn all your damage into fire damage, again, you could see the appeal, but it doesn't work for the elemental bloodline. But for this, I believe it works. I haven't tested it, but I'm fairly certain it does. And the reason I believe it works, we're kind of jumping around here, is elemental damage can be turned into, again, cold as one of the choices. And rhyme only works on spells with the cold descriptor. So snowball, cone of cold, dragon's breath, but only if you're doing the cold version. You get the idea. But it seems that rhyme shows up for most of my damaging spells in a way that I didn't think it would. Like it says, you could use rhyme on this. And I'm like, I don't think I can. I think it's because elemental always, or in most of those cases, can also be added as well. And it's implying that you could do elemental cold and then rhyme. And now again, it's the cold descriptor by default now. That's why I think this works. And if that's true, that's actually quite cool, because elemental cold and rhyme could be extremely powerful. And then you could go, say, elemental focus, cold, greater elemental focus, cold, and do a really solid DC checking build where you're hitting stuff and doing cold damage like cold fireball spells and cold acid fogs. And you get the general idea. It's quite interesting. But that's basically what elemental does. Toppling does with force damage spells, like your magic missiles is a fine example. If you add toppling to it, that does a check. I want to say like a saving throw or a DC check, or like a bull rush attempt or some such, where it literally will knock them down. That's basically it. It's just it falls down, hence they topple. Which again, cheap, but there's not very many force spells in the game, so it's kind of one of those where I'm like, I'd probably pass. But again, as we do these videos, maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe we'll see that the modders have added like a retarded number of force spells in the game, and hey, that's cool. I could get on board with that, but I'd still have to see the list to see who was available for toppling before I make that final decision. Rhyme, again, only on cold spells or things with a cold descriptor. Rhyme does nothing more than, I believe, entangles the target, basically encases them in ice. And they have to do like a reflex save or an ability check to like break out of the ice. Otherwise, they're basically entangled, which is like a penalty to dex, and they move slower. And it's a very thematic and cool, pardon the pun, idea. And I kind of dig it, but I'm not going to do it unless I would do it some kind of cold build for some reason. Piercing, I'm going to talk about this with persistent because I get them confused all the time because of the P. So we want to make sure that we kind of explain them both. So piercing is a +1 level shift. All it does is the target, if they have spell resistance, their spell resistance is lowered by 5. That's nice. That's actually quite powerful. Matter of fact, that's for what it's worth, I mean, for 1 level shift, that's basically for 1 feat giving you better than spell pen and greater spell pen. Because both those feats, that's 2 feats right there, that would be a +4 to your spell penetration, which is kind of like saying -4 to their spell resistance. It's not the same, but it's theoretically the same. But this gives you a -5 then, instead of a +4 to your spell pen. It's a -5 to their spell resistance. That's better with 1 feat than both of those feats combined. Now, yes, it requires that you cast your spells at a higher level, so there is that, but it's still quite cool. Persistent, now, what does it do? It's a 2-level shifter, but persistent is kind of one, for me, that smacks of those save or suck builds. Like an enchantress, illusionist, those are all ones where there almost inevitably is going to be a saving throw. Why does that matter? Because usually the saving throw on those builds are save or suck, which means if they make the save, everything's fine. If they fail the save, they suck. You know, they paralyze, they die, they whatever. So you can see the appeal here. You want to make sure they fail that save. Well, what does persistent do? If you've played D&D recently, 5th edition, they might even have it now, Pathfinder 2nd edition in pen and paper, but I'm not sure. But they have this thing called advantage and disadvantage. This basically gives disadvantage to your spells. Yes, it's pricey. 2 level shifts is nothing to sneeze at, but it's kind of worth it for some of those builds, especially for some of your better spells, because it basically makes them roll twice, and they take the worst of the 2 results. So if it's a save or suck, and they rolled a nat 20, they pass, period. There's always that 5% chance, and chances are your DC checks aren't so amazing that that's only going to happen if they roll a nat 20. They probably can roll like a 17, 18, 19, 20, something like that. But the point is, if they roll twice, and especially if you have a high DC check, and they can only pass with a 20, what's the chances that they'll roll a 20? Well, again, 5% chance. Well, what's the chances they'll roll a 20 twice, back to back? That's a lot less. And you can see the appeal here. So they roll that nat 20, but then they rolled a 19, and a 19 fails. And again, because it's persistent, they failed that check. That's kind of cool. And again, it's a 2-level shift, but I could see the appeal. So going back, again, selective. This one I could care less about, but let's talk about it. Back to our example of Fireball. There's another spell later on that you can pick in the vanilla version of the game called Controlled Fireball. Certainly you've seen it. You cast it at your feet, and you can't even hurt yourself with it or your team, or your pets or their pets, because it's basically a selective spell. By default, it's what it is. So they've made a mod, and again, this is something that's in pen and paper, I'm sure, where your spells are selective, and they either do less damage to your team or they do no damage to your team. It's basically a way to protect you and your team from being stupid. This would be one that I would use in pen and paper. I would not play it in a video game because it's easy enough to control your whole team within reason. But again, you could see the appeal, especially in pen and paper, because anytime anyone, for example, gets a new wizard on their team or sorcerer, and they finally get to the level 3 spells and they get that fireball spell, the first time that they say, I cast Fireball, you can almost feel everyone in the room just clench up, go, shit, he's going to calculate it wrong. We're all going to catch on fire. But now if you have selective, he or she is now protected, and so is the team. And you can see the appeal here. Level 2 shifts now. And this is about as high as I would go for a subcaster build like this one here. Again, we can only get to level 6 spells, so that's a limit for us. But +2 level shift is still not that bad. You can cast level 1 through level 4 spells and +2 level shift them all the way from +3 then to sorry, level 3 to level 6 spells. That's still not horrible. For the level 3 level shifts that we would see, and even the level 4, which would be rare, I would only do that on like a wizard, a druid, cleric, someone that basically has access to level 9 spells by the end of the build. But again, more on that in a moment. For the +2 level shifts, we have Empower, Persistent, which we talked about, Verdant and Thronotic, both those two are at the end that are new. Let's talk about Empower and Maximize together. That's a level 3 shift. Why are we combining these to talk about them together? Because these are routinely used to increase your damage output. It's not the only use. Empower is nothing more than whatever there's a dice roll, not counting like an attack roll, but if there's like a 5d6 of damage, that's 5 dice, d6 dice that are rolled, right? That's a dice roll. So it takes the dice roll, whatever the number turns into, and then multiplies it by 1.5, makes basically 50% stronger. And that's usually for damage, but not only. An example would be mirror image. You roll a dice to see how many images appear around you, maximum of 8. So if you really want to make sure you have 8, you empower that shit. Now that's probably wasteful, but again, that would pretty much guarantee that you have a solid number of illusions around you protecting your character. But that could be empowered. Same with maximize. Maximize, all it does is it takes whatever the die roll would have been and just, like it says, maximize it. Guarantees the highest number. Now, between these two, that's weird, but between these two, empowered's my go-to, and on the forums, because of the forums that I'm convinced that this is a good choice. People will swear by empower over maximize. They say that it's pound for pound for what it does compared to maximize. Empowered is your better metamagic feat pick. Now that's a feat pick, not talking metamagic rods or any other ability that gives you maximize or empower. That's different. We're talking about feats. Why? Because the level shift is applicable. The reason that empower wins, I think, is because it's only a 2-level shift versus maximize, which is awesome, but it's 3 levels. That's a big oomph. Think about a fireball spell. Again, level 3 spell. If I empowered it instead of 10d6, technically speaking, it's not true, but it's close enough to being true because the math works out the same. It's like saying it's a 15d6 spell now, and it's 2 levels higher, so level 3 spell is now level 5. If I maximize it, I'm still doing 60 damage guaranteed because it's maximized now, but it's 3 level shifts, which means I went from level 3 spell to level 6. Now, even at level 5, I can think of something else I'd probably rather cast than a fireball spell that's been empowered, but it's not the point. It's not that big of a stretch because it's still solid damage. But to take it to level 6, there's a lot of good spells at level 6. And to say, oh, I'm going to do just 60 damage, I mean, it's good damage and it's AoE if you get a lot of dudes, and maybe if they're susceptible to fire, like say undead, again, I can see the appeal. But if it's just, I want to do good damage, I would honestly rather cast the level 5 version of Empowered. Remember, spell slots are precious. When you get to those higher levels, you don't get many. So level 5, you probably have more level 5 spell slots than you have level 6, or pretty close to more. So that's why I would go with Empowered over Maximize. Now, again, stopping early here just to point out that Extend, Intensified, Reach, and Empower, of those 4, those are my go-tos, because that covers a lot of spells. I would not grab all 4, just be clear. And you can't grab more than 8 in this game, by the way, and have it work. You can grab more than 8, but it's a bad idea, because the game glitches after 8. So if you wanted 8, hey, knock yourself out. I wouldn't do it, but I tested it for theory. But 8 is the max. But of the max, again, I would probably limit myself to 1, maybe 2, and I use this routinely, not on the wizards or the clerics or the druids, the ones that can pick their spells every day. I use these on the spontaneous casters, like the sorcerers, the inquisitors. War priest here is that actually a set it in for the spells like a cleric, so that wouldn't be something that I would really look into. Maybe one like Extend, because they do a lot of buff spells. But by and large, I shy away from it unless it's a spontaneous caster. And I use it to diversify my spellbook. You know, I can have multiple castings now of Magic Missile or a buff spell or whatever. You get the idea. And that really does open up a lot of doors. Because sometimes nothing's going to work on that target but another Magic Missile. And you only use up all your level 1 spell slots, which again are all Magic Missile. Oh, it turns out I had Empowered Magic Missile, that's level 3, and I have 2 more castings than of that, boom, and that dude's dead. So you can see sometimes that comes in super handy. But let's talk about the last 2 over here, plus 2 shifts. The Verdant and Thronotic are kind of weird. They have requirements, and I think Selective does too. You have to have like a high Knowledge Arcana, I think, to unlock that one. But these ones have an actual feat pick requirement. You need, for Verdant, Spell Focus Enchantment, I believe, and then for Thronotic, you need Spell Focus Necromancy. that kind of makes sense for what they do. So they're both the same type of meta magic in that they take a normal target. We'll explain the targets here in a second. It takes a normal target that would be immune to mind-affecting spells. Okay, think of your enchantment spells, hence the reason that spell focus enchantment for Verdant kind of makes sense, and allows you to affect them now, as if they were normal humanoid targets. Now, what were the targets? For Verdant, that's for plants. For Threnodic, hence the spell focus necromancy, I bet you already know. And even if you don't, I'm going to tell you. It's for undead. And again, there's undead in the game that are immune to mind-affecting spells, and with Threnodic, now you should be able to affect them. Which is, again, if I were to play like a Necrolord build, I could see picking that as a choice. Same with the Enchanter. I could see picking Verdant because sometimes in this game you will fight plant monsters. Not a bunch, but there's plenty enough that it's annoying. And if you're trying to solo the game with like an Enchantress build, it really sucks when you come across plants that are completely immune to like 90% of your spell repertoire. You're relying on pets that you summoned, and God forbid you have something else that can hurt that son of a bitch. So Verdant could be cool. It's not amazing, but again, I could see the appeal. Level 3 shifts now. Dazing, we've already talked about maximize. Dazing literally takes a new meta magic here, where if you do damage with the spell, it adds a daze component to it. So if there wasn't a save, there is one now, very similar to like our toppling and our rhyme type stuff, where it adds the daze effect. And again, that could be AoE. So again, a fireball spell that's 3 levels shifted higher because it's dazing now. If you hit guys with it, not only do they try to dodge out of it with reflex save to avoid being taking full damage, I believe it uses that same reflex save to avoid being dazed. So if they fail it, then they're just kind of because all the smackdown that they just got. And again, for like a sorcerer, wizard, cleric, druid, whatever high level caster, I could possibly see picking up something like this. It could be really nice for some more crowd control because you're still doing damage and now you're doing crowd control all in the same spell. That's something that we all aspire to have. Level 4 shift now. This is a biggie. This is a massive investment, and again, I would never take this unless it was a caster that can get to like level 9 spells. It is called Quicken. It is the only one in the list that is probably the silliest in my opinion. It has uses. Let's talk about what it does. For a +4 level shift, it takes a spell that is not already cast in a swift action. There's a few that do, but the ones that aren't are either what's called a standard action, which is basically like your attack, or a full round, which means you don't even get to move. You can move like a 5-foot stutter step, but that's, I think, it. And you have to like whoop a jibba jibba. Like your summon spells routinely are a full round. Okay, and it basically makes them swift actions now. So this is really nice because you can literally just go, I need that buff. I need those pets. I need you to take damage, and then I'm going to follow it up with another spell in the same combat round. That's 2 spells. Bam, bam. But again, look at how much it costs you. That like a fireball spell, it would cost you 7 levels to shoot that damn thing off. I don't know, man. I can think of a lot of really good level 7 spells that probably do the job without me having to back-to-back cast spells. But again, if you caught in the corner, maybe, the poops hit the fan. You need to buff up. You don't have a shield spell. Quicken shield spell, level 5 casting. I mean, that sucks, but at least you got your shield spell up, right? And I can still follow it up with an attack and maybe whittle down the bad guys a little bit so I can survive the fight. So there's some interesting things you can do with Quicken. The last point to make on Quicken is for the spontaneous casters, which are the ones that I tend to play, the sorcerers, the eldritch scions, the inquisitors. Quicken is actually the only meta magic that you can add that does not increase the casting time to a full round. If I extend a spell as an eldritch scion or as a sorcerer, it now, no matter what it was before, is a full round of whoop jibba jibba jibba. So that sucks. Because it's the extra effort that you have to put into it, if you want to think of it that way. But for a wizard or a caster like a cleric or even this war priest that has spells that you pick every day, because you can slot them up, it allows you to meta magic them free and clear. There's no increase to the casting time. And again, Quicken is the only exception to the rule because, again, by definition, it makes things fast, fires off swift. So that's what Quicken does. But again, for a wizard, they could care less on any of these. They would just slot what they want and pick them and be happy. Level shift that's variable. This is the last one, called Heighten. Some people get this wrong, so I want to be real clear on this because this is not the same as Heighten in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, the pen and paper game, and it's certainly not the same as the Heighten versions that you get in like D&D. So people kind of make a mistake, and I'm not picking on them because it's a game. It's completely different. They see it and they're like, I know what that does. No, you don't. So what Heighten does in this game is you can take damn near any spell. This is one of the few examples of meta magic that you can damn near add to any spell. Not all, because some again are glitchy, but most you can do this to it. And it allows you to increase the caster level from, let's say, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. You can take a level 1 spell and take it all the way to level 6 or 7, 8, or 9. And you're like, why would you do this? What is it doing? It literally, remember I said how none of these increase your DC check of a spell? So again, a fireball spell that's been intensified, for example, is a level 4 spell, but it's still treated as if it was a level 3 fireball for the DC check. Heighten is the exception to this rule. So if I cast a fireball spell that has a +1 to it, so now it's level 4, but because it's heightened, instead of doing more damage or anything fancy like that, which is what it does in D&D, it doesn't do that. It just makes the DC check 1 higher, or 2 higher, or 3 higher, however higher I take it. Maximum, of course, is caster level 9. So notice I can take spells and make them +1 all the way up to maybe even a +8, depending on the level of the initial spell. Not 9. Why is that? Because, again, you can't cast level 10 spells in this game. So I can't put a +9 on a +1 spell, or a level 1 spell, because that'd be a level 10 spell now. But this is what the Heighten does, and it really diversifies your spell book, but it gets really burdensome, in my opinion. It's nice, but I just don't like it. And it's a terrible reason not to like it, because it's too many spells. Why would that be a thing? But it really does get annoying to try to remember which one is this now that I'm casting. Oh, it's the level 4 version of Snowball. Oh, Jesus. So what's the math on that? Let's see, +4, level 10, +4, my DC check. Did I have spell focus in conjuration? Oh, I forgot. Did I have elemental focus in cold? It gets to be too much for your brain to process, in my opinion. Of course, the game does it all for you, but if you're trying to keep track of and say, this guy has a high whatever save, this level of this spell might have a good chance of landing, that's what Heighten's used for, and I just can't fit it into my little pea brain. Notice normally you cannot heighten level 0 spells. Now they may have changed that because I suddenly can do that, but it could be because of the mods. So suddenly you'll see that your orisons or your cantrips, suddenly you can actually meta magic them. But before that, when it definitely was a thing, in at least the vanilla version where you couldn't, whether that's still a thing or not, I don't know. But know that there is meta magic rods and gear that you can use for your cantrips, or in this case, orisons. And they do work in many cases. Again, in many cases they don't. What example might I give you? For example, light spell, it has a duration. You would think we can extend that. Nope. For whatever reason, it won't take it. I don't get it. I don't understand why. Clearly has a duration. It's 10 minutes per caster level. Why can't it be 20? But for whatever reason, the game's decided, no, you cannot extend that spell. And I have not a clue in the world. There's spells that you would think for sure you could reach them. Nope. There's spells for sure you think that they would clearly take in power and or maximize because there's a die roll. Also nope. And you're just like, what the hell? So again, the best advice I have for you is before you start picking these things, research it a little bit. And also save before you level up. Try it. Say, oh, let's try that. Maximize. Grab it because I want to maximize this spell. Save before you level up. Type it in like a hard save where it says level 7 whatever upgrade or pre-level 7 upgrade. Save it, then level up, and then go look at your spell book and say, oh shit, I can't maximize that one spell. Well, that was a wasted pick. Well, then go back to your earlier save and don't pick maximize. See what I'm saying? It's annoying. And some of these, and I don't want to say all of them, but rarely you will find where they say they'll do something, but they do nothing. For example, another fine one, a Heighten, should, from what I understand, only work on spells that have a DC check. But it works on spells like Shield Spell, and just like weird shit. You're just like, why the hell is this getting a Heightened? It doesn't do anything to the spell. That's not true. It allows me to cast that Shield Spell at a higher level, and that's basically it. And that's not what it's supposed to be for, I don't think. So again, there's some glitchiness going on here. And again, I'm not going to tell you not to use that glitchiness. There's another example too where stuff says it can be intensified, but bullshit. There's a spell, Phantasmal Killer, I think is a fine example of one. They either make their saving throw or they die. There's like 2 saving throws, but they're dumbing it down. They make their saving throw or they die. If they make their saving throw, they take 3d6 of damage. It doesn't say 3d6 based on your caster level or anything like that. Again, it's either they die or they take this damage. So it says you can intensify it. How do you intensify the death effect? You can't. And how do you intensify the 3d6? Because it wasn't based on your caster level. It still stays at 3d6. But you can intensify it, which means you can have a higher level casting of the spell. Again, does you no good other than, oh, I have a higher level casting. So again, you can use those. When I see that that's clearly a glitch and it won't work, I try to shy away from slotting that in my spell book. But you can do as you want. but the point's still the same. These are pretty nice, and the fact that the modders have added even more is really, really cool in my opinion. And I hope that the new game, The Wrath of the Righteous, that they're making, the second version of Pathfinder, if you will, I hope that the devs learn from this and try their best to try to incorporate more of these. Not necessarily all, but Rhyme, Intensified were staples, and people were bitching like crazy that Intensified was gone. And I could see Rhyme being a solid choice too for an easy pick. And the other ones, sure, but they're not, in my opinion, highly necessary. So let's talk about our spells level by level. So here's Guidance, is what you'll see in your spell book. I will tell you what kind of uses you may have for the spell. Do I think there's any problems associated with the spell? Things of this nature. Guidance is a very cheap buff for yourself or a teammate. It's a touch range. It lasts for 1 minute or until it discharges, which usually is what happens, and I'll talk about that in a second. And it's nothing more than a +1 competence, that's important, bonus to single attack roll, to a saving throw, or a skill check. As soon as it gives you one of those buffs, or the minute it wears off, it is done. So that's the discharge. Is you attacked, poof, it's gone. Whether you made it or not doesn't matter. Same with the saving throw. Whether you passed it or not, you tried. You got a +1 to it, and you failed or passed, and now it discharges and it's done. So what can you use this for besides the obvious? The fact that it's a standard action. This is not something you use to buff yourself up to swing in combat. But if you know you're rushing into this room, and the very first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get mugged, which means you're going to attack, a minute buff is more than long enough for you to cast it on yourself, run into the room, say, oh, there's those guys, and you at least get it for your first swing. Or maybe you roll poorly on your initiative check, which is not a skill check, by the way. So you get a bonus to like your saving throw. So again, you literally have the upgrade here. So a +1 to your save. Might be enough to save your ass, or at least take half damage. So it's something. I use it for the skill checks usually. And again, the biggest one for me is perception checks. So here's a trick that I learned a long time ago. The buff looks like this little icon here in your picture on the bottom of your screen. You'll see this buff alongside your character's face. And again, it will last for a minute or again until it discharges. Well, there's perception checks in this game. Hidden traps, hidden doors, hidden loot that are just randomly scattered places. They're always the same place, so once you figure out where they're at, it's pretty easy to find them, but it's not the point. You still have to do the perception check and pass it to see it officially in the game. Well, how would you even know it's there? The weird thing is with those perception checks, they roll them behind the scenes, which means you don't even know that it checked it. You may have passed it, but you just rolled poorly at that instant. You could have gone to an earlier save and scum saved it, is what I'm telling you, and then suddenly you would have found it. Well, how do you know? Well, if you put this buff on you, remember when it does the perception check, that is a skill check. Because that's a skill check, it discharges the spell. So as long as it's under the 1 minute duration, you're keeping tabs on that 1 minute. You can buff yourself and your team with this, run through an area where you're fairly certain there's a perception check, and if they all fall off damn near at the same time, back to back to back to back, like almost immediately, not 6 seconds staggered, because remember, you buff one person, then the next round you buff the next person, then the next round you buff the next, so again, it takes a while to buff a team of 6 with just one of these. So by the time you're done buffing the whole team of 6, the first person's got like 30 seconds left, or less. So time to run through that goddamn area. But if you see them all falling off damn near at the same time, oh, you know there was a perception check, and you probably missed it. Because if you made it, it would have said, oh, what's that? And that could have been a trap, that could have been hidden loot, that could have been a hidden door. So this is a way that I use it to kind of scum the area, find out, especially in earlier iterations of this game before I knew where stuff was at. This was a go-to. And a nice little buff. And again, the fact that it's a competence buff makes this a solid upgrade. Light spell. Just lights up the area. This is a bummer, and this is a missed opportunity, in my opinion, in the game, because the devs really had the opportunity to make light-sensitive areas, where like if your vision was impaired, you're human. So if, for example, you don't have a torch or a lantern, no light source near you, you should be at a penalty, at a disadvantage in some way to your swing, whether it's like a -1, -2, -10. Maybe they're considered concealed or partial concealed, 20% chance to miss or 50% chance to miss, like they're invisible. That makes sense. If I can't see you, how can I shoot at you? So that's the thing, but they never implemented that in the game. It's a bummer. Some modders have added the ability for, say, orcs or half-orcs to be light sensitive. And as such, when they're out and about, they're actually at a penalty. I'm assuming if that's the case, then there's also the potential, not saying the modders have did this, but there's a potential that a mod or a modder has made an area where if the light spell's not up or they don't have a torch in their hand, that humans, for example, are at a penalty. That would be awesome. I'm not saying they have done it, but it's probably something that could be done. And hopefully they will do this for Wrath of the Righteous, because again, it's one of the things about being human that was always a sucky thing about being a human. For those that ever played these types of games, pen and paper style, everyone's like, I'm going to be a human. Why? Extra feet, extra skills, that sounds good. +2 to any stat that I want. Nice. You can't see in the dark. I don't have dark vision. You have to wear a torch, or carry a torch, or wear a lantern, or have a light spell. I don't have any of those things, so I guess we're wearing torches, or using torches and lanterns to get through the area. God forbid you run out of those and you're trapped like 50 feet down into a dungeon with no light and no ability to find your way the fuck back out, because that's a thing. So again, humans suck for a lot of reasons. Those with low light vision, or I think they've upgraded to the point now where everybody has dark vision except for humans. But the point is anyone that can see in the dark, or reasonably well see in the dark, was at a massive advantage in Dungeons and Dragons compared to humans. That's why the light spell was invented. So again, could have been really implemented for some serious fun in the game. Sadly, you can go through this entire damn game in the goddamn dark and still find every piece of treasure and hunt without any problems. Resistance, this is another one of those that's kind of lame. For what it is, it's what it is. It's a +1 save bonus to all your saves for 1 minute. It doesn't dispel like the other spell of guidance upon making or failing its first save. It lasts for a minute, so you can buff up, and you probably should. I just always forget to. And it's kind of lame, but it could save your ass. I mean, let's just not kick it out of bed just because I don't like it. It's an okay spell for what it does. And again, because it is a resistance buff, why is my cursor not popping up here? Because it's a resistance buff, it will stack with the competence buff from guidance. So between the two of those, if you go back-to-back casting of that one and the other one, of course, competence will fall off the moment you do a check, but if it's there when you're making the check, you'll have a +2 to your saves. That's any save, fortitude or reflex or will. That's not bad for a level 1 character. I mean, really. But again, it is kind of lame. And it is a resistance buff. That's something that you can get on like a Cloak of Resistance +1. And that's permanent once you wear the cloak. You just leave it on all the time. You always have a +1 or better. They don't stack, remember? So, get yourself a cloak. Virtue. This is probably one of the worst ones on my list, next to probably Light Spell. Virtue is just a +1 temp HP for 1 minute. And again, I hate to bitch about it, because it does what it's supposed to do. It gives you 1 temp HP. It will not necessarily save your ass every time, but it technically could. And it's free. You can infinitely cast it. I don't know why you would, but whatever. To me, spells like these, the Virtue, the Resistance and stuff, and the other spells that are coming in this list in level 1 and 2, could have used the swift action. If you could have done this as a swift action, or you use it, or like a movement action for that matter, where I could just not move, say, oh shit, I'm going to get mugged in this combat round, but I still want to attack or cast a spell to protect myself. You're not casting Virtue. But if it cost just my movement or was a swift action, I'd go Virtue at every opportunity and then cast a spell to attack or cast a spell to buff myself or shoot with my crossbow. You get the idea. I think they really dropped the ball on this. And I'm not saying that this is not pen and paper. This probably is pen and paper. It's not the point. It's a stupid pen and paper rule, because who the hell would ever really use that shit? It's not something that people use. But after that, we have level 1 spells. Now we have a big list and new spells on this list. So we need to be real clear here that a lot of these are going to be coming from Call of the Wild, and even every once in a while you see one from Eldritch Arcana, but we're using both mods. So again, we're going to talk about every spell, whether they come from those mods or from the vanilla version of the game. And some of the vanilla version of the game spells have been changed, so be real careful here with these two mods. Bane, Bless, Cause Fear, Cure, and Inflict Light Wounds. I'm combining those in the same list because it's just a mirror image opposite of each other. One's Conjuration, one's Necromancy, though. Divine Favor, Doom, Fire Belly, Protection from Alignment, Ray of Sickening, Remove Fear, Remove Sickness, Shield of Faith, Stunning Barrier, Summon Monster 1, Unbreakable Heart, Haze of Dreams, Sanctuary, Command, Obscuring Mist, Magic Weapon, Touch of Bloodline. That's a laundry list of dudes. And again, you see my codes up there. So again, you see mutation spells, necromancy spells. There's probably evocation as well as enchantments. I don't see an illusion spell. Yeah, and no divination spells yet, or at least at this level. And you notice that and I'll do this for every level in this video and in the future ones. I'll break them down by school down here, and the ones in parentheses will be how many were associated with a saving throw. Because maybe you want to see if, maybe I should be a Necro Lord. You'll get that spell focused necromancy, greater spell focused necromancy. Well, how many spells are in there that have saving throws? Well, right now, at level 1, you got 5, all 5, no less. Now, maybe you're not grabbing all of them. It's not the point. If you say, I'm going to go specialize in evocation, so far that's a terrible idea. It gets better, but it's not much better. Again, this is a watered down cleric. I hate to call them that because they're awesome, but they basically are clerics that just don't get all the cleric spells. They get a little more fighty fight to them, though, I will say that. They're pretty cool. But war priests are basically not evokers. They'll make a good showing if you wanted to go spell focus evocation and you get all the higher level spells and stuff, as you'll see in the next couple of videos. But even in today's video, you only get like 3 evocation spells, I think, that have a DC check. But again, this is why I do this. And again, notice the asterisk for like Stunning Barrier, Sanctuary, Cure and Inflict Light Wounds. This will be a staple for those healing spells. Obscuring Mist, a spell that's been missing so much. So really nice that they added that. Thanks to you, Modder, for that. But we're going to break them down individually. Let's talk about them one by one. Bane, a very nice spell for what it does. It is a bad guy, teammate friendly, but bad guy penalty spell. Notice that there is a save or suck component to it. So literally, if they make their save, nothing happens. If they fail, they suck. They get whatever the penalty is. In this case, a penalty to their attacks and a penalty to their saving throws against fear effects, which means you could use this to technically set up some fear effects, whether that's intimidation. I don't know if that works for that, but it will definitely work on your fear spells. So again, you'll see cause fear, scared, and fear are 3 examples. And again, that could help you out in your team set up those effects. Notice it also is one of my favorite mechanics in this game. Bane counters and dispels Bless. That is a counter mechanic that I love in D&D. I hate counter spell. Let's be clear. That's a fucking stupid idea. But counter spells, spells that will counter them because they're technically the mirror opposite. That's awesome. That's thinking. That's planning ahead. And again, if you see the bad guys, for example, bless up and give themselves the reverse of this, which is a bonus to their swing, which that sucks for you guys, and a bonus to the save against fear, which again sucks for you guys, especially if you're going to try to fear them. Bane counters and dispels it, which I don't think is even a will save. I think it's just you cast Bane if they're in the area of effect and they had Bless on them. Now they don't have Bless anymore. They don't have Bane on themselves either. But so what? You still remove their buff, and that's cool. I dig that shit. So that's kind of nice. One of the other things I don't like about this spell is the fact that there's a lot of spell descriptors. So you see over here, mind affecting fear, compulsion, emotion, and negative emotion. That means that 2 things. One, that there's plenty of gear out there that you can find that, for example, gives you a bonus to all your fear spells or your mind affecting spells. This would qualify. But notice this also means that there's plenty of bad guys out there that might be immune to emotion effects. This would include this spell, and you can see the problem. So the more spell descriptors, the more likely that you'll find bad guys that are immune to it. So those always kind of suck just in general. But I do like that the AoE is pretty huge, and I do like that it is centered on the caster, so you kind of like run in there, or if you get caught in the corner, you just say, fuck it, Bane! And while it may not hit everybody, because lots of guys will pass that will save, if it hits at least one dude, then at least did something. So I kind of dig that part. Of course, there's spell resistance, which is always an issue in many spells, so I never even think about that, but that's not considered a problem to me because it's so common. Bless, the exact opposite, again, another amazing spell, and Bless counters and dispels Bane. So if they hit you with Bane, hit Bless, poof, it's now gone. You don't get your Bless anymore, but it get rid of Bane, which is nice. And it's, again, the exact opposite. Now, between the two, Bane versus Bless, which would I rather have? If you had a hard pick, like an Inquisitor build where the spell picks are limited, a War Priest, I can pick whatever I want every day. But for like an Inquisitor, Bless every day, all day. Why? Because it's a buff for you and your team for many, many minutes. Well, it's a penalty for Bane for the bad guys for many, many minutes. Yeah, but are they going to really exist for 1 minute to 20 minutes? You're probably killing them in the first 5 rounds. So why does it matter that the duration is 1 minute per caster level? You see what I'm saying? But for Bless, that's always a buff for you and your team for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe 40 if you extend it. You get the appeal here. And again, it's the exact opposite of Bane. There's no problems with it, other than I suppose you could say, well, it's a morale buff, and there's other morale buffs that are coming that are better, but that's not a problem. It just means that this is a good spell. Later on, it's not as useful. Cause Fear, terrible spell. For what it is, though, at the early levels, it's not bad. It sets up Shaken. Notice that it's not a true save or suck spell. It is a save and something will still happen spell, which I love. Which means if they make the save, for 1 round, they are still shaken. And that's something that you and your teammates, or at least your teammates, maybe not you, but your teammates can capitalize on. And that's cool. I like spells like that for that reason. The downside of the spell is that there's an HD cap. and Intensify does not solve that problem as far as I know. So this spell really does poop out once you get to level 6 monsters, and not level, but HD 6 monsters, which is basically the same thing, or higher. So once you become a level 6 character, this spell becomes retired, basically, more or less. And again, lots of spell descriptors. Again, you see the same damn problem we had before. But I do, like I said, I do like that one round of Shaken. Frightened, of course, is amazing. That's the goal. And you can't be stated early enough that Shaken is a penalty to their swing and some other stuff. But the frightened condition to the bad guys can be money, because they go screaming, panicking away from you and your team. That could be away from your attacks, but it could be also through your attacks, which means attacks of opportunity. This is the problem with this spell when it's being used against you, because you could do something stupid like run away from the bad guys that could breach you with their weapons, and all of them get a free swing, and you're dead now. But again, same, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So we can just as easily use this on the bad guys, early levels anyway, and hope to scare the fuck out of little bastards and watch them go fleeing from you and your team and get pokey in the face as they run past everybody and die. Just nice little mechanic there. Notice this is another counter spell. Cause fear, dispels, and remove fear spell. Which again, you'll see the same in reverse. We'll get to it. But that's, again, I like those mechanics. Cure light wounds and inflict light wounds were lumped together because it's basically the same thing but in reverse. Notice that there's no spell resistance on either. One, while you would think, well, this is a cure spell, why is there a saving throw? This can be used to damage undead. This can be used to heal undead, or Jathal, or you if you played an undead character. Remember, with these two mods, you have the potential to make an undead character, which is pretty badass. And inflict spells become extremely cool now suddenly, because you can heal yourself or use them to damage the bad guys. Or if you get the AoE versions, use them to heal yourself while damaging the bad guys. You can see some serious fun you can have here with the inflict spells. But it's basically the same thing. Notice it does 1d8 of healing or damage. It doesn't matter which one we're talking about because they both do the same thing. Plus 1 point per caster level. Maximum plus 5, which means you can intensify this spell to get that plus 5 up to what? Well, plus 1 per caster level, caps out at level 5, add 5 more levels to it. So it caps out now at plus 10. Now, should you do that? No. Well, let me rephrase. If you have access, and you are a war priest, so you do, if you have access to cure moderate wounds at level 2, there's no reason for you to intensify this spell. Hell, there's no reason for you to empower or maximize any of your healing or inflict spells either. Because, again, something's better is coming up at the next level. Or the level after that, or the level after that. Remember, this is a plus 1 level shift. Intensified is. Empowered is a plus 2, and maximized is a plus 3. So this would like literally be saying I could maximize this to heal the full 8 damage plus 5. That's 13 damage healed or inflicted, depending on which one I cast. And all it cost me was casting it as a level 4 spell. Well, what kind of heal or inflict spell could I cast there? Well, this is light, moderate, serious. This could have been cure critical or inflict critical wounds spell. That's 48 of damage plus a maximum of 20. That's way better than this 1d8 going to 8 and then the 5 is always stationary. That's a terrible idea. Exception to the rule on this would be, again, if, like, say I was playing the Inquisitor and my spell picks were lean, if I have cure light wounds and or inflict light wounds, but I don't grab the upper versions like the moderate, the serious, and the critical, well, then feel free to intensify, empower, maximize all to your heart's content. I still probably wouldn't use it, but it is there. But notice that since these are touch attacks proper against undead, if you're using the cure light wound spell, or against living, you use the inflict light wound spell, because there's a touch attack, sneak attack potential is there. So there is a chance to miss if you're using it as an attack, obviously. But it's not bad. And again, I do like having spells that allow me to heal the team. Divine Favor, a nice buff. Personal effect, so there's not a whole lot of things that buff it. Notice that you can extend it. There's a nice duration on this for 1 minute only. Never gets any worse, never gets any better as far as that's concerned, but it does get better over time. Initially, it's a plus 1 luck bonus, that's important, to your swing as well as your damage from your weapon. And then for every 3 caster levels, level 6 and level 9, it caps out where it's a plus 3. So plus 2, then plus 3. That's not bad. And there's another spell coming later, though, called Divine Power. We'll talk about that in the next video. But it technically will replace this in that it's also a luck bonus, and it gets to be plus 3 all the way up to plus 6. So then this one is obsolete, you may think. That's not true. I would still keep this spell. Like if I was playing Inquisitor and this was one of my limited spell picks, I would still keep this. Why? Let's say you have that Divine Power, okay, and you're going to a dungeon. You're on the open road, and you're heading to the dungeon. Let's go to the dungeon, everybody. And on the way to the dungeon, you get mugged in the forest. Are you going to use your divine power to kill these motherfuckers? That's your divine power. That's a very potent spell. You want to save that for when you have a big dungeon where you can capitalize on using it for many fights, right? Not just this trash mob that just jumped you in the forest because they thought they could. No, that's when you bust out your old divine favor friend here. Just cast one of that. It's only 1 minute buff. That should be more than enough for this fight. Kick their ass and then go back to going to the dungeon, buddy. Here we go to the dungeon. And now you got your divine power for later. So that's why I like these. Again, this is not one that I would normally retire. They don't stack. So there is that because, again, luck bonuses don't stack. And there's also something else that I keep forgetting as far as problems are concerned. It's not a problem per se. But there's a ring in the game that I like called the Great Dreamer's Smile. That is a luck bonus. It's very uncommon for me to have luck bonuses on my wizard type characters, especially like my magus. So this is a difference. This is a cleric type spell. They have luck bonuses, and again, this will not stack with the ring. The ring gives you like a +1 to your swing, or sorry, +2 to your swing, +2 to your saves, +2 to skills. Gives you like a +2 to like fucking everything. But they're all luck bonuses. There is some good news though. With these mods, there's also a trait that you can pick up as far as uses. And that trait allows you to, with any luck bonus, whatever we're talking about, that you may have that's a +1 or better, it gets another +1 added to it. So if that works, I haven't tested it, for this spell, this now suddenly can get all the way up to a solid +40 to your swing, +40 to your damage. Thinking divine power, that can go to a +6, now go to a +7 to your swing, +7 to your damage, and plus a bunch of other stuff that gets added to divine power. Like you get an extra attack around, so it's like a haste spell. You get a temp HP. It becomes like a very, very good spell, divine power is. Doom. I want to like this spell. I really do. For what it is, it's kind of crap. The fact that it's a save or suck spell makes it kind of garbage to me. If I was more necromancy prone, like I was going to be a necrolord where spell focused necromancy was kind of my shtick, I could see picking this up. Why? Medium range, that's a biggie. It's single target, but that medium range, that's money. And it has a nice duration. It is a save or suck spell, and I don't think it's a save every round spell. Those are the worst ones, like your paralysis spells. No. If they fail this save for many, many minutes, which probably won't really exist because they'll probably die in the first minute, but whatever, they're going to be at a penalty. And what is the penalty? They're basically shaken. A penalty for shaken is like a -2 to your swing, -2 to your saves, and I think even like your skills. So there's a variety of screw you stuff that it does, but only for one target, so there is that too. The other thing, again, many spell descriptors again, another problem there. But notice this other part. Because it's shaken, you can actually use it to set up other teammates or yourself if you have, say, Shatter Defenses. For those of you that don't know, that is a feat where if the target is a version of Scared, which is Shaken is the low one, then it's, I think, Feared is the next one, and then I think Petrified or something similar, like Panicked, I think is what it's called, is the third one, and the worst, sort of. Those are like the 3 stages of fear in this game. Any of those effects, and if you have Shatter Defenses with your melee attacks, at least I don't know about your range ones, but definitely for your melee attacks, the target is considered flat-footed. So that literally means that they have no dex bonus to their armor, and they have no dodge bonus to their armor. That's probably a pretty good screw you to the bad guys for your chance to hit them. And that's nice, and this spell would set that up, and at medium range no less, so you can see the appeal if you're like a weak caster standing back. Let me debuff that bad guy for you with a nice shaken, and you have your main tank up there doing the Shatter Defenses thing, and now they're tearing right through them like that butter. You can see the fun you can have with this type of spell, if it weren't for this whole damn save or suck problem. Fire Belly. It's kind of a garbage spell. Uses, let's stick to some positive. So it's the first and only real low-level AoE spell you're going to get. Cheap AoE spell. It's like 1d4 damage. And yes, you can power or maximize that. You can't intensify it because, again, it's only 1d4. It's not 1d4 at level 1 or anything weird. It's just 1d4, period. But it does give you fire resistance 5. That's the real selling point to me here. But sometimes, like you got 3 bad guys and they just happen to all have taken enough damage that like a 1d4 AoE damaging spell like this could be enough to take them all out. Just saying, it's rare, but it's possible. Every time you use that breath weapon, which is what it is, a very, very small cone, and not teammate friendly, every time you use it, it lowers the duration by 1 minute. And if you're down to like the last 1 second, it still will work. So if you're down to the last 1 second, you might as well just fire off a fire breath if you have someone within range. And again, obviously not your team. If it will do something, of course. If they're immune to fire, just attack with whatever weapon you have. But again, it's lame damage. It's a very weird spell. But again, I could see it early on. And again, because the I keep calling it DR, the fire resistance 5 is more than enough to protect from the spell. So when you see bad guys do the fire belly, if you have this on your character, you can just be like, oh, no, fuck you. Fire resistance 5, bitch, and I got that for many, many minutes. I'm fine. And run right up to that dude. They'll still keep trying to breathe the fire on you. They won't do a damn bit of good. You'll just beat their ass. Protection from alignment. Now this is a pen and paper spell. Let's just say it. This would be an amazing spell in pen and paper. This is one we use all the time because there's other ways to use protection from alignment in D&D and of course Pathfinder. I'm assuming it's the same, where you are immune to like mind controlling effects from like the opposite alignment that you're casting spell on. So again, if you do protection from evil, you're protected from evil intrusions and blah blah blah. So there's a lot of role playing fun you can have with this, but obviously this doesn't work in this game. But it is a +2 armor bonus, a deflection bonus that doesn't stack with other deflections, of course. +2 resistance bonus to all saves, but again only against attacks from that alignment. Well, the spell is protection from alignment. So what alignments do you get to pick? You can pick lawful or chaotic. You can pick good or evil. You have to pick one of those 4. And then yes, you may recast it 4 times, a total of 4 times if you want to protect from all 4 things. Notice how true neutral is not in there. And that's animals, for example, are true neutral, because most don't have an agenda. They just are trying to eat food, and they're like, fuck that guy, let's eat his face off. And that's a true neutral attack, so that doesn't do you a damn bit of good against those pricks. So that's a problem. You also have to know the alignment of the bad guys you're fighting, and what's worse in this game, it's not worse, it is worse, it's just kind of cool, as a matter of fact, that the devs did this. Most of the bad guys in the groups that you fight, they're not all one alignment. It's not like a band of robbers that all decided to be murder hobos and are all chaotic neutral. No, some are chaotic neutral, these other ones are neutral evil, and they all just band together because fuck the system basically. And again, neutral evil, I could protect from evil, but I'm not protected from the chaotic neutral unless I cast the chaotic protection version. And again, so you're going to be protected from some guys, but not all guys. This makes this spell less fun. Again, the fact that it's a deflection bonus and resistance bonus, but only against a specific alignment, that can be countered with a Ring of Protection +2. That's a permanent buff. And a Cloak of Resistance +2. Those 2 items, and this spell is now garbage for you. Because, well, at least for you using it on yourself. Again, the fact that you can cast it on others, I suppose there's some appeal there. But that's about it. And it's really lackluster when you see some other spells coming down the pipe. Ray of Sickening. Again, if I was a Necro guy, this would be more my shtick, especially if I'm a Ray caster. There's a lot of good Ray spells in Necromancy, by the way. But it's a save or suck spell proper, so again, Fortitude save and it straight up negates it. But again, if you did spell focus and or greater spell focus Necromancy, you can see the fun you can have here. Has a terrible range in that it's close, but it has a nice duration, not that you're going to need it. It basically sickens the target. Again, if they make their save, nothing happens. You can also miss with it because it's a Ray spell, so there's 2 reasons that it kind of sucks. But again, this is what the sicken condition does, for those of you that don't know. It's -2 to their attacks, their weapon damage rolls, saves, their skill checks, and ability checks. Now, most people stop reading once they get to the save throw part. The skill checks and ability checks, like, who cares? They're not rolling those. That's not true. There's many spells in the game that you have, a web spell being a fine example, that once they make or fail the reflex save on that, they're trapped in the web period anyway, and they have to do continuing checks to get the hell out of it. That's usually like an athletics check, or maybe it's a mobility check, for example, or just like a straight up strength check, hence the ability check part. So there's skill checks and ability checks in the game that you can soften them up, if you will, using the sicken condition. Keep them trapped in that web spell or other stuff, again, for greater effect. So it's kind of cool. And again, it can't be dismissed that the penalty to their rolls for attacks, weapon damage, and saving throws. So that softens them up for all kinds of good stuff too. Remove Fear. This one's a good spell. And we're going to have like 3 spells, I believe, that fall into the same category, including this one. That it's not just a buff, like a preemptive buff. It's also a suppressing spell, like after the effect. If you made the mistake of not casting it first, like maybe you got jumped in the forest or whatever, or it's not your turn, you rolled bad on the initiative, and someone's been feared, you can suppress the fear effect with this spell. It's cool for the duration of the spell. Well, 10 minutes. What's the chances your character is going to be feared for more than 10 minutes? If you are, you got problems. So this is probably going to solve those problems. That's kind of nice. But again, could be used preemptively, and probably I would use it. So, but you can see the appeal here, especially for those panic moves where they feared the teammate and he's going to start running like crazy. Well, the downside of this is where this falls into a problem possible category. Let's say it's me and you. We're fighting some kobolds. One of them fears your ass. I have remove fear. I can cast it on you, but you roll before me as far as initiative. What are you going to do when it's your turn? You can't just wait there for me to cast the fear spell or remove fear spell. So what happens? You run away screaming from the bad guys and maybe get attack of opportunity and you die. Well, that sucks. That didn't do us any good. I didn't even get a chance to protect you. Okay, take the reverse. It's my turn before yours. Now, if I see that you're feared, I can cast this on you, suppress the effect, and you're good to go. And of course, everyone that's in the effect, including myself, will get at least the buff, the +4 to saves against fear spells or fear effects, for 10 minutes. So again, there's some utility there, but it's real touch and go, so to speak. But I do like the fact that the suppression effect was added. That's a pretty nice upgrade in my opinion. Remove sickness is another one of those where it's preemptive / suppressive depending on which way you use it. +4 bonus. Notice what it protects against. Disease, nausea, and sickening conditions. That's a really, really nice protection buff there. And again, disease, that's a big nasty one in the game, usually a penalty to one of your ability scores. But notice that again, if you're already under the influence, this is where it really comes in handy for like disease. For 10 minutes per caster level, no less, not just 10 minutes, and it's only single person, but you can suppress the effect of disease or again, nausea or sicken for the duration of the spell. Now, that gives you time to not only solve the problem, kill those goddamn bastards that just diseased you, but it also gives you the potential then to find a cure or try to cure them after the fight's over. You get the idea. For the disease at least. But the nausea, this could be interesting too. I haven't tried it, but there's a spell in the game called Stinking Cloud that we can cast ourselves. Not this character, but like a cleric or a wizard could, like Octavia. If you don't have delayed poison, which is how you usually protect yourself, or maybe just get caught in a stinking cloud from a bad guy, like your main tank or your DPS gets caught there, then they fail their check and now they're nauseated. It's not sickened, it's nausea. That means they're puking their guts out. They can defend themselves, so they're not helpless, but they will not attack. They can move, so they can get out of the cloud, but the cloud and the nausea condition sticks to them for a number of rounds. Well, if they stay in the cloud, I can cast this at range. You see how it's close range? Protect or suppress the effect, from nausea. Now they should snap out of it, stay in the cloud, and that's important, and have all the bad guys walk into the cloud, try to fight him. They'll probably puke their guts out, and the fighter or DPS can kick their ass. Now, easy peasy, pumpkin squeezy. You can see the fun you can have with that. Again, I haven't tested that to prove that does work, but it should based on what the tooltip is telling me. And again, that could be some fun tactics to employ. It's weird, and you have to have a good understanding of who's on the initiative roll, because again, if that tank is puking his guts out, and then they come into that cloud and kick his ass before I have a chance to protect him from the nausea or suppress the effect, then again, he could just straight up die from me trying this silly-ass tactic. Well, the only real problem that I see with this spell is really the fact that it's a one-person buff. Shield of Faith, this was the one spell you probably wanted instead of protection from alignment, because it protects +2 armor deflection bonus again, so they won't stack. And then this one gets better. It starts at +2 and then goes all the way up to +5 by level 18. So of course this is a solid buff. Now yes, this is cheaper than a Ring of Protection +5, so you can use it all the time if you want. I highly recommend it. But once you get something that's like a deflection +4, +5, you're probably not casting it on yourself. But remember, you can cast this on other people and pets, for example, and give them buffs. And that's kind of cool. So it always has some utility. And I like this spell. This is a solid spell. 1 minute per level. That's a solid duration. And again, I do like the fact that it just steadily gets better over time. Stunning Barrier. This is a spell I want to like. I really do. It is a weird spell. But let's stick to some positives. Okay, so it's a +1 deflection bonus. Obviously, that won't stack with your other spell we just talked about, or even the other one after that, except for the fact that the protection from alignment. Maybe I'm protecting from evil and I'm fighting chaotic neutral bad guys. If I pop this one on me, at least I have a +1. So there is that. So there's layers of protection, if you will. It's a +1 resistance most of your saves. Again, that's universal. It doesn't matter if it's evil, chaotic, whatever. It's just saves in general. And again, just as good as a Ring of Protection +1 or a Cloak of Resistance +1, or both, I should say. And it only lasts for 1 round per level, which is like horrible, or until it discharges, and that's the real save or suck problem here. It is a save or suck spell in that once you get punched in the snoot, it discharges the spell and tries to stun the target. At the very least, the positive thing I could say here is at least it's a will save. And if you get punched in the face, chances are it's probably someone that has a terrible will save, like a fighter type or a rogue even. So might land. Probably will pass it because it's a level 1 spell. It's not very impressive. And you're probably not being an abjurer. As far as spell focus abjuration, you're probably not making this your school of choice. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's unlikely. So it's kind of a crap spell. If I could theory craft for you, If I were a dev, or I could speak to a dev and convince them of this, this spell would be fine if they just did one change to it. And I'm not saying increase the duration or add it where it discharges multiple times, because there's another spell called Greater Stunning Barrier that the modders have added. That's basically what I just said. No, that's not what I'm asking for. What I would ask for is that it's not be a standard action. If you could cast this as a swift action, where it's like, oh shit, I got stuck in the thick of things. I don't have time to cast, say, Shield of Faith or even Protection from Alignment because I still want to attack in the same round. But I do want some protection and the chance to stun the bastard if he sneaks through my protection. Cast this as a swift action. If that were a thing, fuck yeah, I'd pick this spell. This would be okay then suddenly for me, because it would be that, only in an emergency break the glass kind of situation. But I would totally do that, and that would be cool. But they don't, and it's it's terrible duration. The fact that as soon as you get hit, the stun the buff wears off like immediately, and they're probably going to make that save throw more likely than not. So it's not the best spell ever, but it could be situationally okay. Summon monsters, we're going to get 1 through 6 in this build. So I'm going to talk about these in general after this, but these are what they really are. It's a full round casting. That's the biggie problem here. But again, you still can move like the 5-foot stutter step, but I would select 5-foot stutter step first, move, then cast the spell. Because usually if you cast a spell and you don't tell the game you want to move, it doesn't give you the option to move after. But don't just move 5 feet. You literally have to click that little icon that says, I'm only going to move 5 feet, I think. And so do that. Place yourself where you want to be, and like back away from the bad guys usually, and then cast it at your feet in front of you, kind of giving you that barrier of your pets or your summons between you and the bad guys. And this is an okay spell. Excuse me, goodness, I'm more tired than I thought. Positive things. Any of these pets can set up flanking in this game, and flanking is power. That's like a +2 to your swing. It also sets up a sneak attack if they're flanked, so there's a lot of fun you can have with that. It's a hit that you and your team don't take, because who gives a shit about your imaginary dog that they shot first, except for the fact that maybe you could like draw some aggro, as well as like fireball, for example, that could hit it and of course you standing next to it. So there's that. There's a terrible duration on these. There's a long cast time, which is straight up sucks. And of course they're easily killed. These ones, if you're going to use them, like for an Inquisitor, unless you're a monster tactician Inquisitor who gets spells like this for free, where they're also like 1 minute per level instead of 1 round per level, that's the one you want. But if it's a normal Inquisitor, you get this generic spell just like this War Priest does. Sure, I'd pick it up, but I know that you're going to swap it out once you get to the better version. And you can only swap out like 1 spell every so often, so you're not going to want to load up a bunch of spells to try them out and say, oh, I'll just swap these out later. Well, how many do you have? Because if you have more than like 5 or 6, you can't swap out all those by the end of the build. I think 6 is the maximum number of spells you get to swap out, and there's like one every like, I want to say like 4 levels, 5 levels, something like that. Like it starts at level 5, and then it's like 4 levels from there. So at 5, 9, 13, no, that can't be right. Let me think about this. 1 through 4, then it's at 5, 7, 8. So it starts at level 5, and it's every 3 levels. So it's 5, 8, 11, 14, there we go, 17, and then at 20. So 6 spells altogether. And again, you can only cast or swap out spells from the level lower than the highest level you can cast. So when you unlock level 2 spells at level 4, at level 5, you can swap out a level 1 spell. At level 7, you unlock level 3 spells. And then at level 8, you can swap out a level 1 or level 2 spell, but just 1. And again, the game will ask you. It's kind of cool that they did this. I don't know if that's in the vanilla version anymore. I've used these mods for too long. I can't keep all straight. But if it's from the modders, thank you for doing so. If it's part of the vanilla version of the game, that's awesome, because I don't remember that being a thing. But again, they patched out so many things in this game. They could have updated it as the devs, which, again, I would appreciate. But it's a solid upgrade. And again, this spell is okay. The other ones get better. And again, if you wanted to make a solid Conjurer build, War Priest actually is not the worst idea ever. Not only can you get like spell focused conjuration, that's like all your heal spells, your cure light wounds and whatnot, or conjuration spells, but also you have access to summon monster 1 through 6, as well as summon elemental spells. And then by getting spell focused conjuration, you could unlock things like augmented summoning, superior summoning, and you can see the fun you might have here, just as an option, just putting that out there. Unbreakable Heart, this is the 3rd preemptive buff / suppressive spell. And if I was hard picked to pick one of the three. So you remove fear, remove not disease, remove sicken or whatever it was called, and then this unbreakable heart. This would be the one I'd pick. Why? Because all the stuff it protects from. Yeah, the sicken one is nice too, but this one really is a nice one because of the fact that it protects against negative emotions and things that cause confusion. So not only do you get a buff for those saves if you don't cast it first, and you're under those effects, it suppresses it for the duration of the spell. Now the downside is the duration on this one's straight up piss, 1 round per level. It's a single person buff. But think about what we're talking about. Are you feared? Are you raging? Are you, again, for like a wizard that can't cast spells while raging, that's a straight up fuck you. Crushing Despair, that's a massive penalty, AoE penalty for you and your team. Again, the fact that it could suppress those effects, same with Confusion, this is a moneymaker. And Confusion is a fine example. And you may say, well, what happens if you get confused for yourself? You can't cast this on yourself because you're confused. The game takes control of your character. That's not true. What happens every round when you're confused, they roll on a table 1 through 100. If you roll low, I want to say 1 to 25, you can control your character for that round. Anything above that, 26 on up, let's say, you're confused in a way where you can't control your character. So you stand there babbling like an idiot. You try to attack the closest target, which could be one of your teammates or pets, and or you, like the worst case scenario roll, like you slit your own throat, like you damage yourself in some way, which is just fuck that shit. But if you have control of your character just for that round and you happen to notice, oh shit, he hit Confusion on me, and I'm just, by pure dumb luck, I'm able to control my character this round, suppress that shit, cast a spell on you, boom, I'm back in it, baby. And now you can see the appeal here. That's why I like this spell. Again, I love the suppressive effect, and I love that they've added stuff like this. So that's kind of cool. Haze of Dreams. After talking about all those awesome spells, something crappy had to come along the way. Let's try to keep positive. It's a penalty to their movement. It's that they move at half speed. I suppose if you're shut off like the turn-based combat, if you go back to real time with pause, there's like one bad guy left, like a fighter who's a dick and in full plate armor. You could debuff him with this thing for a decent number of rounds, I suppose, and you and your team can run around in a fucking circle and shoot at the son of a bitch. He's gonna have the worst AI ever of just wandering around in a circle trying to chase you, go, ooh, and you can just like pepper him with crossbow bolts and arrows and whatever else you can shoot him with at distance. So there's that, I suppose, but this would be a terrible one to pick if you had a limited spell pick like an Inquisitor. This would be a dumb idea. And then again, it is a save or suck spell proper. The fact that it has a decent number of spell descriptors, again, Charm, Emotion, and Mind Effect, and there's a lot of things that are immune to all that stuff. It doesn't stack with slow, the duration is crappy, the range is close range. There's a lot of bad to this spell. I would probably never slot it. Sanctuary. Now this one, I didn't give enough credit to this one back in the day. This one's actually not that bad. Think about what is on the War Priest like this. This is kind of a weird one. But again, remember you can cast it on someone besides yourself. Think about what you might use this for. It would be the best way of thinking about this. So this would literally be oh shit, someone got jumped and we need to make sure that they GTFO. So what do? I'll give you an example. The other day I was tinkering around with a character like this and we walked into a room. I was like, I didn't force level them up. I was actually leveling them in the Tenapper steps just to try to see how a new team of 6 different caster types that I hadn't played before would mesh. And my War Priest got into the room. We saw like some bad guys to the left. The fight started. And there's a guy way the fuck over there. And I'm like, you know what? She's got enough movement. She could power sprint over there and smack him right in the face. Maybe she gets lucky, take out one of the first guys right off the first round of combat. So without checking the room, this very large room, I had her sprint, the charge maneuver all the way over there with a +2 to swing. She hit the guy. Didn't kill him, but did solid damage. I was impressed. And then realized that he was flanked by like 3 fucking giant spiders. And guess who didn't have any delayed poison on them? Oh, son of a bitch. She got her ass ate up with spider bites. She wasn't poisoned, but she was definitely hurting, and she needed to fucking get the hell out of there. And I thought about Sanctuary. I'm like, oh, I have another character that could get over there in time, because they had like extra ground movement or whatever. They could get over there and cast a spell on her. If, big if, the bad guys fail their will saves, she'll be able to like slow dance her way out of there, and she won't even have attacks of opportunity. So she can move and then move again because she's not attacking in that round. So she can move like up to 60 feet away when it's her turn without an attack of opportunity against her. Now, in theory, that worked great. In reality, what happened? They stopped attacking her because, again, they failed their will save and they all turned on me. But, and here's the downside, one of them was far enough away from me, but within range of her, that they had to move towards me to attack me because they weren't going to attack her. So the AI says, oh, we'll attack the next closest target, which was this doofus that cast the spell. It moved, I think it's the spider, but it could have been the guy. I can't remember. Point is, they moved, and this character did an attack of opportunity, which she couldn't control, which took the spell right the fuck back off her. So the moment you cast any attack spell or you do an attack of your own, spell's gone, bye-bye. So I basically buffed her, and then she wasted it with an attack of opportunity, and we got our lunch got ate basically. And I'm like, well, shit. So I tried, but yeah, again, went to an earlier save spot, went back and kicked her ass. But it was a definite noob moment for me to run in like a dumbass without securing the room first. I fucking know better. But again, this could be cool on someone like Tristan, for a cleric that's his sole purpose should be not even using a crossbow, because he straight up sucks. I mean, in the vanilla version of the game, he's like a dex of 12, and that's like his best attack stat. That's shit. And he doesn't have point blank shot or precise shot. You have to give him those. Why would you do so? He sucks. So just use the spells that are auto hit or AoE spells, and then use them for buffage and healing and shit like that. That's what he should be used for, in my opinion. So give him this spell. Let him cast it on himself. When the fight starts, boom, sanctuary, bitch. I'm all here. You can't touch me. I'm just healing everybody else. Fuck you. Fuck you. Ha ha ha. Now, yeah, someone's going to make their will check and try to kick his ass. But he'll be buffed up. He'll be protected. And the team is there still, too. So, again, the point is you're trying to limit the number of attacks coming his way. And again, you could see the appeal here. So this could be definitely useful for a soft target, quote unquote. But again, short duration, so basically a fight, maybe two, but mostly used for the, oh shit, I fucked up moments, in my opinion. Command. This is another spell that got added thanks to the modders, I'm fairly certain. This was a one-round spell. Literally, it's a save or suck spell. It only lasts for one round, even if they fail their save. And it's like you get like to issue one of three commands. I think one is halt, one is run, which means they run away. I can't remember what the third one is, like sit, I don't know. But it's a dumb spell. We'll rephrase. It is a will save, and therefore maybe it'd be useful for you for one round fucking over that fighter that's a dumb barbarian or that dumb fighter coming your way who has a terrible will save. Maybe. Maybe. And again, it's one round. I have yet to check. But this could be extended potentially. So if that worked, that could be 2 rounds, and that could be more useful now. But would you want to extend this to a level 2 casting? I don't know that I would. But again, I got a lot of spell descriptors. There's a lot of bad here. I'd probably pass. Obscuring Mist. Now we're talking. A spell that I've always wanted to have and was missing from my repertoire when this game came out. This is something we would use in D&D like all the fucking time. And people are like, well, isn't this a penalty for you and your team if you're standing in the cloud? You better believe it is. And there's ways around it, like blind fight or improved blind fight or anything that would take away the concealment penalty. If that works, it works in this example of this spell, because the game only checks and says, oh, you have a 20% mischance. Oh, but you have something that negates a 20% mischance. Or in the case of blind fight, something you can get early fucking levels, no less, blind fight doesn't negate the 20% chance. That's the improved blind fight that does that. But what blind fight does is you get a 20% chance to miss. It'll roll twice and take the better of the 2 choices. So it's basically advantage. And the bad guys probably don't have blind fight. There's some do, but probably don't, at least at the early levels. So this is a chance for you to cast it. And most people think, oh, so it's got range to it. Am I supposed to cast it on like the casters and the clerics and the guys at long distance range, the rangers and the archers and shit? Fuck no. This is the Batman spell where you throw the fucking crystal vial at your feet and the cloud appears around you and you raise up into the fucking sky. Okay, maybe not that, but at the very least you use it to buff you and your team. And again, yeah, you're at a penalty, but no one can really shoot into the cloud. They can't really see the attacker, so they can't use sight to locate the target. I'll talk about that in a minute. But anyone in the cloud, including you, has that 20% miss chance. So it's basically blur that you gave everybody, bad guys and good guys alike. And again, if you're prepared for it, a la blind fight, improved blind fight, and other stuff that can take this problem away, boom, advantage for you and your team to kick their ass. Especially on the harder settings. Remember, they got inflated stats, but the 20% mischance or a 50% mischance, that's static. That's just there. That's just something that they have to deal with just like you have to deal with. So on a harder difficulty, this could be money. So this was missing from the game, and I missed this desperately. And again, no spell resistance. It's got nice duration to it. There's a lot of bang for your buck here. And let's talk about that last part. So creatures farther away have a total concealment mischance of 50%. That means, since creatures 5 feet away, if this is accurate, then that means, because the cloud is more than 5 feet, I'm sure of that. Yeah, 20-foot burst. So from one edge of the cloud to the other, if someone had like a reach weapon, and say that weapon was like a 7-foot reach, they're at 50% chance to miss my ass because they just can't see me. Archers, again, 50% chance because they're farther than 5 feet away from me, so they got a 50% chance to even shoot me and my team. That's awesome. And then that use sight to locate the target. What does that mean? If there's a spell where you have to, like let's say an AoE spell, but you have to pick a target, you can't. There's no target for you to pick. This is the exact opposite. For those of you that are wondering, when I was talking in my dragon build videos, we talked about the fact that Draconic Bloodline and Dragon Disciples even get and it's not a feat, but it's kind of like a feat. It's a class ability, if you will, called Blind Sense. And what Blind Sense does, it allows you, like, you know roughly that the bad guy's in here somewhere, so you can target him, but will look like AoE spells. So this would be, again, a counter to that. But, again, most bad guys don't have Blind Sense. Echolocation is another example of a spell that would give you that same kind of ability. And again, it's not Blind Fight, it's Blind Sense. It's completely different. But that's, I think, in pen and paper, the explanation for what Blind Sense does. I would assume that would work for here as well. So again, if you have cast this on the bad guys and you have spells that only are target-only AoE spells, but you have Blind Sense and they're within range, I know where your happy ass is. Boom, hit your ass. Now, doesn't do anything against things like fireball, lightning bolt, shit that's like, if you just happen to be in the area, you're going to get hit, period. That's always going to be a thing. But if we're talking direct targeting stuff, I think this would even mean, like, for ray spellcasters can't shoot your ass because you would need to literally locate the target, and you can't do that shit at fucking range if you can't see me. So how could you shoot me with a ray spell? So that could be awesome. Just saying, there's a lot of bang for your buck here, and this is a really, really nice spell. Magic weapon, it's a +1 to your weapon. Notice that there's 2 versions of this in this game. One came from Eldritch Arcana, the other one came from Call of the Wild. There is a difference. So you want to know this. They're exactly the same spell, except for Call of the Wild gives you the version where you can pick and choose which weapon you're buffing, your main hand or your offhand weapon. The other guy, they just assume it's your main hand weapon that's getting the buff. So that kind of sucks. So Call of the Wild is the one you want, and I can't tell you which one is the Call of the Wild. I want to say it has a different color look, but that's not going to tell you much because there's 2 different color looks, though. There's the one that's Call of the Wild, and there's the one that's this, and I can't tell you what they look like. So this would be one where save it first before you level up and say pick magic weapon, put it in your tray, see if it has the tab, if it has the little icon tab to open it up and see if it shows you 2 different magic weapons. If you hover over it, one will say main weapon, the other one will say offhand weapon. That's the one from Call of the Wild. That's the one you probably want. Okay, and that's only because you will routinely put the good magic weapon in your main hand because that's the one that's going to be more likely to hit, and then in your offhand you'll have like the cheap dagger or masterwork dagger or something like that. And again, it'll be a +1 to the swing, +1 to the damage now, so there's some appeal there. Notice it doesn't work for unarmed strikes or any natural weapon, but Magic Fang does. You don't have that. I'm just pointing that out. That's in the spell. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of weird, but it makes sense, I suppose. In the vanilla version of the game, though, I think you could buff like your fists with shit like this. Touch of Bloodletting. This is a weird spell. This is a melee touch attack. So a chance to miss. It can crit, but it doesn't do damage. It says it does damage, but it does damage in the next round and every round thereafter, if they fail or save. So it's a save or suck spell. And you can't target anybody with this if they have full health. They have to already have taken damage, i.e. they're already bleeding, so you're making them bleed more profusely, if you will. That's not the reason you use this spell, in my opinion. The reason you use this spell is the other fact, that it causes exhaustion for the duration of the spell. For 1 round per level, if they fail their check, they're at -6 to strength and dex. That's a guaranteed penalty, in most cases at least, to their damage output, their chance to hit you, and all that jazz. And their armor's going down, and their reflex saves suck now, and again, just sets itself up for some really good fun that you can exploit. But again, notice in the problems, I literally list that not only is it a touch attack, so you can miss, but notice any healing stops the spell, including regeneration. That sucks. But notice this last part here. It can't be used to directly target someone with 100 HP, or 100%. So like if you click the spell and try to click the target, and it gives you the little red, like, you can't use that spell here. The good news is that it prevents you from wasting the spell on someone that's fully healed. The reason this could be useful is, like, say there's like 3 bad guys, your team threw out like a spell that's like some crap damage, and you hit like 2 of the 3. You weren't paying attention, you didn't really notice which was the 3rd one. You try to use this spell on that guy, it won't let you. Oh, okay, then I meant to cast it on his friend that is hurt. Okay, that works just fine. So again, it's kind of nice. So as far as it's a problem, yeah, but it's a good problem. It saves you from wasting this spell. Level 2 spells now. Arrow of Law, Aid, the 4 single buff spells. So that you're talking like your Bull's Strength, your Bear's Endurance, your Eagle's Splendor, and your Owl's Wisdom. You don't get the one that makes you smarter, the Intelligence one. And you don't get the one for Cat's Grace, the Dexterity bonus one, as a cleric. And again, a War Priest is just a watered-down cleric. So you get the other 4. And I'm just lumping them all together because they basically do the same thing. Just a +4 to 1 stat. It's not that that's not powerful. I'm just saying that it's not that impressive. Blessing of Courage and Life, Blessing of Luck and Resolve, Bone Shaker, Cure Inflict Moderate Wounds now, Delay Poison, Effortless Armor, Find Traps, Grace, Communal Protection from Alignment, Remove Paralysis, Resist Energy, Lesser Restoration, Sound Burst, Summon Small Elemental, Summon Monster 2, Hold Person, Silence has been added, Savage Maw has been added, Bone Fist, Burst of Radiance, Path of Glory, Consecrate, Desecrate, and Lesser Animate Dead have all been added. And on that, Lesser Animate Dead and Animate Dead spells have been changed. So we'll talk about that when we get to that. But based on the breakdown here is, again, plenty of Abjuration spells and no one saves. 1 Conjuration spell always will be at least 1. That's your Cure spell. At every level, you'll see at least 1 of those. Necromancy, again, you'll see at least 1 of them. That's the Inflict spell. But now we have 2, so there's at least, again, some more Necromancy love. Evocation finally has a nice showing. And Enchantment, again, shows up 1 more time. And hell, finally we got a Transmutation spell that has a saving throw. So it's a little all over the place. But again, notice that the 1 Divination spell you get is pretty much that's all it does. You never get saves for your Divination spells. It's very rare. Both talk about each. Arrow of Law. It's a to-hit check on it, so there's a range, touch attacks with a chance to miss, but that means sneak attack potential is always applicable. Notice that we have, it's really good against chaotic outsiders. It's good against chaotic targets too. It's terrible against lawful in that they're completely immune. That's including lawful evil. So like devils are lawful evil. That's not going to do shit against them. You can, of course, miss. It's only half effective against neutral targets, and that's neutral in regards to lawful or chaotic. Okay, so lawful or neutral or chaotic. At least it does half damage, and again, still gets sneak attack potential. Then it really bones over the chaotic outsiders. So that basically is like saying demons, but not only. Really nice damage, and the fact that there's a cap to it, 10 d6 per 1d6 per caster level, 10 d6 max, means you could probably intensify this for 15 d6. But the downside on this one is, again, you're not going to find many demons in this game, which is a bummer. But in the Wrath of the Righteous, I hear that we're fighting devils or demons, so this could be, again, making a comeback in that game that's in the future. Aid, solid buff. It's a nice, basically it's like Bless, but for 1 person. So, a nice morale bonus to your attack and your save against fear, but it also gives you the temp HP. And again, that's nice. Now notice that caster, 1d8 plus caster level to a maximum of 1d8 plus 10 at caster level 10. That means you could probably intensify this, possibly. I'm not sure. And again, there's a die roll here, so there's probably the chance to empower or maximize, but that would be dumb. But again, there's some fun to be had with a spell that you can just cast on yourself every now and again and get like up to 18 HP on your character every once in a while. That's nice, especially the early levels. That 1d8 plus whatever is a nice little bump to your life expectancy. So again, it might keep you alive for early levels, but if you're taking that much damage, other than just the random spike damage that snuck through, if you're taking damage constantly, this ain't going to save you. And again, Greater Heroism and other spells are going to be better, and we'll see them later. But if you were going to pick it, like say as an Inquisitor, I'd probably replace it by then. Your 4 buff spells, they do what they're supposed to do. It's a +4 to Strength or Con or Charisma or Wisdom, and anything that it's applicable for that. So again, your DC checks of your spells would go up. If you use Wisdom, for example, your Charisma would go up. Your Persuasion skill would go up with that. Con, more temp HP. Your Fortitude saves are better. Bull Strength, you're stronger, which means you swing probably and hit harder, unless you're a dex-based build. So, the typical stuff you'd expect. But again, early gear, or easily replaced, I should say, with gear. So once you get to +4, you'd be like, why do I even need these things? Well, you can buff teammates, and not everybody's getting the +4 or better belt and headgear. So, pets as well. So there's reasons you can use it for other things. Blessing of Courage and Life. I like this one. I didn't give it enough credit, I don't think. This one is interesting in that it's a buff, which is lame, so like +2 to fear and death effects. I keep forgetting that part. But it does last for a decent amount of time. You can shoot it at distance, so to speak. I think of this spell, even though it's not, I think of it kind of like Healing Word, where you can shout something at a distance and heal one of your teammates across the way. in that there's a healing component to it, but only if the person that you buff with this spell, as a swift action, cancels the spell and they heal themselves. So it's not like me healing you, so it's not truly like Healing Word, but the fact that there is range to it makes me think of it that way. So this would be a nice way for me to like, oh shit, the tank is taking it on the chin, or might be overwhelmed here before too long. Why not throw this at them? And then when it's the tank's turn, they have the option of swift action healing. It's like a little pocket heal. And again, the fact that it's a swift action, heal, go back to swing, swing, swing. So you can see the appeal here. But it's a solo buff. It's not particularly impressive otherwise. Blessing of Luck and Resolve. This one's kind of weird. +2 morale bonus against fear effects. Again, nothing special. We have seen +1s all the way up to this point. So it's double woo. But notice this part. If you get a failed fear check, it'll let you re-roll it with a +4 bonus now. And whether you pass it or not, the spell cancels at that point. So it basically should say 1 minute per level, or until it dispelled, or whatever it's called. Discharged, I should say. And yeah, I just can't seem to care about it. Bone Shaker, on the other hand, now this is money. A nice range on this sucker. Auto hit spell. Even if they make their check, they still take damage. It's half damage. So there's always an effect, which I love that. This is just an amazing spell from start to finish. Starts off at 3d6 of damage plus 1d6 per 2 caster levels. So this one doesn't have a cap, which means at level 20, you're getting 20 divided by 2 is 10. 10d6 plus 3d6, you're getting 13d6 of damage at medium range with this spell. For a level 2 spell, single target, that's not bad. And you can intensify this, I think. And if you can, it's dumb because you never have a cap. You get all the way to 20 level, how do you get to level 24 or 25? Well, you can with gear and other fiddly bits, but it's probably not worth it. Again, your cure spells, I'm not going to reiterate the points, but again, those are the 2d8 now, maximum +10. And again, don't intensify and power maximize these things unless you don't take the higher versions. But again, either or both, they're always useful. Delay Poison. Now this is a nice spell. This is another suppression spell, but also a preemptive buff spell. If you can buff up, you're better to buff up on this thing because it lasts for a fuck ton of time. And this would be one that if you extend it, people would be like, why bother? It's already on for like 1, 2, 3, 5 hours at a time, and then suddenly up to 20 by the end of your build. Well, early levels, 5 turning into 10. Think about that. If I took a level, let's say I was able to cast this as a level 3 spell, because extend would make it 1 level higher, and I did so, and it would last, let's say, from 5 hours now to 10 hours. Cast it at the start of your day in the dungeon. You go through, kick some ass, maybe take some damage, not poison, because you're immune to poison while you're under the effect. But you burn out of your spells, you take enough damage that you need to take a knee with the team and heal back up and whatever. Take your 8-hour nap, get back up. You still got like an hour plus buff still on you, son. So why would you refresh it? You cast it again, but you cast it now on another teammate that never had it. So now you got 2 people that are immune to poison. Go back through the dungeon and clean house some more. And yeah, it may wear off of me, because I'm going to buff myself first, I pretty much guarantee that. May wear off on me, but the one I just buffed up, she or he has it for like another 10 plus hours. And again, just let them be the frontliners taking all the poison bites and shit while you stand back a little bit, attack at range. You can see the appeal. With enough people that have this, let's say I have it on this character and I have it on Lindsay, because she'll have access to it as a bard, I'm fairly certain. So she buffs herself up and I buff myself up. We fight through the dungeon with the other team of 4 other players. We take that knee, wake back up. We still have the buff on us, both of us. So instead of buffing me and her again, we buff 2 other people. So now you got 4 of your 6 teammates now fully immune to poison for a good long while. And you just keep rotating it that way. You'd be surprised how often 3 to 4 people always have poison protection. Now, yeah, if you get jumped, the fact that it can suppress the poison effect is money. Because poison's nasty in this game, just like diseases. Any ability to stop that from happening, at least for a short term, is helpful. And the fact that it has a long duration is extremely helpful as well. Because poisons can sometimes last for days. So the fact that it could last long enough for you to get back to fucking town and go to an actual cleric and have them heal you proper, just saying, it's appealing. So again, but it's better to be used beforehand. And again, there's plenty of spells. Cloud Kill and Stinking Cloud are 2 solid examples. I'm sure there's more that are poison spells that we can cast, not necessarily this character, but our team can. And you could stand in this shit all day long. It wouldn't affect you one whit, but it'd piss off the bad guys. This is a cheap and easy way to solo a lot of content. Have delay poison on your character from like a scroll even, and then have your stinking cloud wizard cast that shit at your feet and just stand there while the bad guys are hawking their guts out and I'm just like chopping their pieces off. It's fucking amazing. Effortless armor. The only thing about this I care about is the fact that we get our speed back. So if you're at a penalty to speed, like you're in that full plate suddenly, and going from like a 30 movement to like 20 or 15 or something god awful, I get my speed back. That's the only real selling point here. Yeah, the athletics, mobility, and stealth checks are impeded by higher armor, and you can remove up to 5 points away from that penalty, never more than. So if it's like a -4 penalty, you don't suddenly get a +1. You just take away the -4. But the point's still the same. Those are nice, but only really on a solo build if you're doing athletics, mobility, or stealth. And it's probably not for you in this build. Fine traps. It's okay. Personal effect, this is actually one of the better spells for the type of character that this is, because he is a wisdom-based caster, and therefore his perception's already fucking high anyway. Why not give it another bonus up to a maximum of +10? Now, I originally said that this worked on all perception checks. That's actually a lie. I checked it myself. It actually only works on traps. So that literally means detecting traps. So it's hidden doors don't count as traps. Hidden loot don't count as traps. But he already has a solid perception check anyway. But the thing that you're really worried about is, yeah, it'd be nice to get all the loot and hidden doors and everything else, but you're really worried about, am I going to walk through a trap? Now, here's the downside. Just because you can see the trap don't mean you can remove the trap. So, yeah, look, I know I'm about to die, I guess. And sometimes, quite frankly, you just can't progress further without walking through that fucking trap, especially if you're going solo. So, unless you want to teleport over, and that's expensive, and then, of course, you're going to have to leave, so you have to teleport the fuck back. And chances are, if you see one trap, there's probably another one right around the fucking corner. So they usually tend to keep their stuff secret that way. And it's kind of annoying. I suppose, if you wanted to cheese it, not that I would ever do such things. No, not me. But you could save before you step on the trap. Walk through the trap, see what kind of damage it's going to do. Like snowball spell is a common example. And say, you know what, I wonder if there's a scum save, go back in time. Say, gee, I wonder if I could protect myself from cold with this resist energy cold spell. Poof. And then walk through the trap again and watch the snowball hit you, but it didn't do any damage. So you could cheese some shit that way. It's kind of weird, but it's not going to save you that much. But it's still a solid, nice one. And the reason I like this one for this type of character, he's a war priest. Where's he going to be in the rankings of the team? Single file, or if you do the pyramid like I like to do, the triangle shape, he's probably in the front, or at least right behind the frontliner. So his chance of spotting that trap before it's too late is a good choice. Now, if it was Tristan, he's in the fucking middle or the goddamn back. There ain't no way he's spotting that trap before someone steps on it. So that's bad. So again, this is actually pretty good for an Inquisitor, or in this case a War Priest, who's probably going to be up front or damn close to it. Grace, I want to like this spell. I really do. And I think that the key to me liking it is it's very similar to the Sanctuary spell that we talked about not too long ago. This is a personal effect spell, so when you fucked up. Swift action, that's the saving grace here, really, in my opinion. The fact that it's a swift action and it can still do something. But it only lasts for a round, and I don't think you can extend that fucker. Maybe you can, but still would be a bad idea for like an Inquisitor. But this would be something on a cleric like a War Priest that I could totally get down having one of these for two reasons. One, even if I never use this spell, remember you have spontaneous conversion as a cleric, or in this case a War Priest. So I could switch it to like a healing spell, or if maybe I'm an evil cleric or evil War Priest, I can do an inflict wound spell. So that's a terrible reason to pick it, but at the very least it's not wasted that way. The other reason I like it is I'm trying to think of a use for it. So it's a very similar get out of jail free card. Like, I fucked up, I shouldn't be here, and I need a GTFO, and attacks of opportunity are going to be a problem. Swift action means I can cast on myself and book it. Get the fuck out of here, and check potions and whatever else I need to do, and have the team run in, pincer off the bad guys so that they don't just keep following me to finish me off. So sure, there's that. But the other downside then is, like, usually I find that there's almost a better solution. Like, how about you just kill him with a spell? So again, there's usually something better waiting for you. But I can see keeping one in my back pocket. Communal protection from alignment. See my statement on protection from alignment, how it sucks, and then magnify that for your whole team and only lasts for 1 minute. Again, in D&D, this would be the spell that you would literally, the protection from alignment, so circle of alignment or whatever protection, would be the one you draw on the goddamn ground where you summon the demon or devil in the center of it and they can't break out because of the protection circle. This is not the same thing, and it doesn't work in the game. However, I will say, and I should have mentioned in the protection from alignment spell, the modders have added some spells where it specifically says in the tooltip, protection from alignment will protect you. And that's great that they did that. But now here's the downside of that. They added the spell, not the devs, the modders. What's the chances the bad guys have access to that fucking spell and know to use it against you? It's probably not going to happen. So again, I appreciate their effort in making it more relevant, but it's one of those too little too late. The devs should really have thought of this and said, you know, protection from alignment or communal protection from alignment will protect you from X, Y, or Z, from this evil attack or this good attack or this chaotic attack or whatever, or half the damage or whatever. They should have added that, in my opinion, and they never did. Remove paralysis. It does what it's supposed to. Downside is, obviously, you can't cast it on yourself. However, supposedly my mod says from Call of the Wild that they've changed familiars where your familiars can cast spells on you. I can't get mine to do this. So if anyone knows how to get your familiar to get off their ass and do this job, maybe that's a thing where, again, if this works, your familiar could unparalyze you if you had one of these waiting for you. But, again, we're a war priest. I don't think we even have familiars. Resist energy. Amazing spell. If I was torn between this and protection from energy, I would have to pick this one. Protection from energy can make you immune, but it pops. It wears off because it just absorbs X amount of damage to a maximum. 120, I think, is the cap. So once you exceed that cap, then that comes through and you can start taking damage like normal. And yes, you can say, well, just cast protection from energy again. Well, how many times are you going to cast that on yourself? If you're taking that much damage, wouldn't you rather just limit the amount of damage that comes through with a nice 30 resistance to everything, and then beat the motherfucker that's daring to hurt you in the first place? And again, 30 might be enough to be immune from their damage. It just depends on how well they roll, how much damage they're putting out. But it will protect you from any of the 5 elements. You have to pick it when you cast it. So acid, fire, cold, electric, and even sonics. They didn't forget about it here, even though they forgot it in about every other category. But this resist energy as well as protection from energy together is amazing. If you can get both, I highly recommend it. But if you have to pick one over the other, I would honestly say this one, because it's always going to be on you, unless someone obviously dispels it. You will have the buff for many, 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 many minutes, and that 10 protection jumps up to 20 eventually, then goes to 30 permanently, and you'll always have that then on your character for long periods of time. And for those of you that are anal like me and think, hey, can I cast all 5 on myself if I have 5 castings? Yes. You can. It's dumb. You can do it. I used to do that in Neverwinter Nights 2 all the damn time. Just walk through areas, basically like a god, just immune to every kind of elemental damage. Like, fuck you and your fire damage. Oh, acid, ha ha ha. But that's just silly. Lesser Restoration. This is one of those spells where when you need it, you'll know. The one good thing about it that I can keep forgetting to mention, it will remove fatigue. Now let me give you an example why that's kind of important. One, you can't charge if you're fatigued. Barbarians can't rage if they're fatigued. So Barbarian love this spell. I usually keep these as like potions in my back pocket for me and my team, just because you're randomly going to use them. But a good use for these, if you don't have a potion of them, is, again, you're like walking through the forest, working your way back to Oleg, and everyone's whining like the little crybabies that they are. I'm tired. We don't get go anymore. And you just try to push your luck a little bit more because you're like, yeah, I can see Oleg. Shut up. We all get ice cream once we get there. And, of course, you get jumped like 5 feet out of Oleg's place. Son of a bitch. And everyone's tired. No one can charge. The barbarian can't rage. Well, at the very least, Amiri, here you go, Lesser Restoration. Boop, you're not fatigued anymore, and she'll rage and go and kick some ass. And usually that's enough to get you through. It doesn't work on permanent ability trains, any curses or diseases, and certainly not negative character levels. Those are restoration and greater restoration and other spells that solve those problems. But if it's a temp penalty, usually like I've been poisoned, I've been diseased, cure the disease, cure the poison, but you still have the penalty to your strength or dex or whatever. If it can be worn off by just taking a knee, this spell can take it away too. Think of it that way. So if I can get one of my strength or my dex back just because I took a nap, then if I cast this on myself, I get 1d4 random roll. And again, because it's a die roll, again, empowered, maximize, all applicable, I wouldn't necessarily turn away, say, a metamagic rod use to make sure that I get a better roll. Because if I'm at like a really low strength dex, or any ability for that matter, because remember, if any of your 6 abilities go to 0 or less, you die, period. So if someone diseased or poisoned you and your charisma is down to like 1, fuck that shit. Even if charisma is not your stat, no, I need to heal 4 and more every damn time. So maximize metamagic rod, empowered metamagic rod, get it up to a good chance to always hit something positive, get a big boost back each time, and just keep scum saving, get your charisma or whatever stat back up. Sound burst. It does damage. It's auto hit. So there's that. The saving throw has nothing to do with the damage. It has to do with whether they're stunned or not. And only one round, so that's lame. It is a save or suck spell, so that's lame as far as the stun is concerned. But the 1d8 AoE damage, it's not teammate friendly, but that's easy enough to solve. It could, because of its auto hit nature, could set up, say, Touch of Bloodletting. Remember, they have to take at least some damage. A fully healed person, you can't do Touch of Bloodletting on. So I suppose someone could Sound Burst AoE the bad guys, and then you can run up and go Touch of Bloodletting on somebody and exhaust the shit out of the fucker. So there's that, I suppose. But it's a very lame spell. Summon Small Elemental, very similar response that I have to my summon spells for like summon monsters. This one, though, the only honorable mention, this one gets, because it's full round, you only summon one, only summon one, which straight up sucks, is the Fire Elemental does fire damage. So if you need to like kill a troll and you have no fire damage, I guess this might work. So, Summon Monster 2, it's getting better. And again, if you want a Conjuration build, you know, the Augment Summoning, Superior Summoning, you have a chance of getting a solid number of dogs out. When you only summon one thing, just like the Elemental, you only summon one thing. But Superior Summoning, a feat that you can pick, if you can summon more than one, like you see that says 1d3 extraplanar dogs, it's 1d3 plus 1 now with that feat. How do I know that? Because the minimum you could summon is 2, the maximum you could summon is 4 with that feat. Now, I did not keep summoning until I found a 2 and a 3 and a 4. I summoned it and picked and got a 2, and I can stop right there. And I know it works. How do I know that it works? Just because I get a 2? Because if it's not working, again, I have a choice of a 1, a 2, or a 3, right? Well, first, you have to know that the feat does work, which it does. Second, you have to know that there's no way for you to get a 2 anymore if it does work. How does that work that way? Remember, if it only works if you summon more than 1, so a 2 or a 3, if I summon 2, I should get 3. If I summon 3, I should get 4, right? So how do you ever get 2? You get 1, and then it adds another 1. That's how you got the 2. That's how I know it works. Okay. Again, if you're summoning just the one wolf, because it's only one wolf, you're only going to get 1. So it doesn't do you shit for any of that. Augment summoning, however, works for both of them. That's a +4 to strength, +4 to con. More health, a better fortitude save, better attack bonus, better damage probably, assuming they're a strength-based attacker. Then a solid choice. The wolf is tougher, obviously, and the wolf has the ability to trip targets compared to the dogs. But again, more bodies on the battlefield is not a bad idea in most situations. On that, if I were to put a penalty under here, especially if you're fighting in the Snapper Steps in the game, not just as a standalone, but in the game, the Snapper Steps will open up, and you can go there and kind of like power level your characters a little more. That's what I use it for. But there's some mega bad guys down there. Do not think that you're going to bring your C game to that and just be like, I'm going to kick their ass. No. There's a bad guy or more in one of the fights, like a main boss fight, where they have cleave, and not just cleave, they have improved cleaving finish. What does that mean? If they kill something and something else is within range, they try to kill that too. And then if they kill it, then they go to something else that's in range. And until they miss or don't kill something, they keep swinging. So they could swing 20 fucking times if there's 20 bad guys around them within range if they just keep killing every target. Well, guess what? Your pets are fodder. And when you summon your pets to go fight those dicks, and you are within range, your pets die in one swing, and then you took like a decent amount of damage. You didn't die, obviously, but you took a shit ton of damage. You're like, what the fuck happened to my pets? And why the hell is my health down to half? Oh, fuck. Improved cleaving finish. And they kicked your ass. And this is one of those fights where you just don't summon shit. This is one of the only times in the game where I'm actually quite happy that the Monster Tactician is a bad choice. I hate to say it that way, because Monster Tacticians are cool, and I've used them too. But it's definitely cheesy. Because, I mean, let's face it, Monster Tacticians are the tit, man. I mean, they got healing spells and damaging spells. They're basically pocket clerics in their own right. If you do a little bit of a monk dip, just like one level, or for like a traditional monk, a wisdom based armor, they don't have to wear armor. They can monk it up like crazy, and they have pets that last for like a minute per caster level, and their pets can get all the way up to caster, or the summon monster 9 by the end of the build, no less. So they can have some serious fucking fun. And they're just like their own team. So that's why they can solo so well. But they get into that one fight with those cleaving motherfuckers, and it's over. You have to rethink your whole planning. It's not to say they couldn't beat the fight by themselves, just that they're not going to use the traditional, team stomping trick of just summoning multiple pets and saying, fuck them over, boys. Because no, those guys are going to die. Hold person, solid spell. It's paralysis spell, and I know people will call them hold spells because they are, but I think of paralysis because there's other categories that are not hold spells that are still paralysis spells. It's the same thing. We're talking they're helpless, and that's the definition then of flat-footed. So coup de grace are capable now, and sneak attacks as well. Enjoy, just kill them. But this is not even a save or suck spell. This is the save or suck spell on crack, which means that at every goddamn round they're going to try to make that save. Remember, on a nat 20, doesn't matter what the DC check was, they pass. So there's always a 5% chance. That's why these spells are really bad, but when they work, they're beautiful. My advice to you is if, big if after you paralyze somebody, you and your team capitalize on that shit, go over, sneak attack their ass, or better yet, coup de grace, which is the auto hit, guaranteed crit once you get next to them. Why? Because you never know when they're going to fucking make that save. Capitalize while they're helpless. Go over there and finish them off. And you're like, well, there's 3 bad guys in the room. We paralyze one, and I'm a team of 6. We'll go kick those other 2 guys' ass. No. If you can get over there and kill that motherfucker, take the option. Why? Trust me, it's just so much easier knowing that doofus is dead and now you're back to 2 again. Whereas next round, if you didn't capitalize on that, he could pop free and now you're back to fighting all 3 of again and you just wasted your time. It's a better chance. Again, safely. Don't do something stupid like run through 5 guys to kill that one doofus and take attacks of opportunity. But if you can get over there safely with 1 or more of your team, or just shoot them, with the Ekendayo or a Raycaster from, say, Octavia for some sneak attack love, no less. Kill him off is my point. Take the advantage of the fact that he has like 0 dexterity, technically. That's what helpless means. He's going to have a shit armor. He can't defend himself in any way, shape, or form. And he's just going to sit there and just watch his face sizzle off with her acid splash cantrip, no less. And do sneak attack damage every fucking time. Might as well do that. The only real downside of the spell, besides the save or suck and suck some more spell, is the fact that it is a whole person spell. So it doesn't work on all monsters. So obviously it doesn't work on animals. It certainly doesn't work on the higher monsters. But for anything that basically is an intelligent fighter type, old person should work. Silence, a spell that was missing, I believe, from the game. Pretty happy. This was, again, in the line of the obscuring mist, something that was definitely missing. Why? It is a solid, you don't get to cast. Most of the spells in this game are verbal. And certainly if you're a bard, they are all verbal. At least by definition, they should be. So you don't get to have just somatic, like gesturing shit. No, you have to speak the words. So screw over a lot of dudes. And it's not just that. This is actually a AoE kind of protection spell, if you will. Keep reading at the bottom where it says that creatures in an area of silence, again, this is a static force field area, if you will, they're immune to sonic damage or language-based attack spells, attacks, spells, and effects. All of them. So again, if you got like some, I don't know, harpy or singer bitch or whatever that's trying to enchant you or whatever, slap that shit down and stand in it with you and your team. Completely immune. Yeah, you can't cast spells, but what's the chances that someone that's trying to confuse you or charm you with her singing songs or whatever is going to be a good fighter? Probably not. Go over there, kick her ass, but stay in the bubble. And that's my advice to you. So this can be used offensively as well as defensively. And I kind of dig spells like that shit too. Savage Maw. Now this one's trippy. This one gives you, since it's a personal effect, an extra melee attack. Nothing fancy, just a bite, but a strength modifier added to it. And again, you're a war priest, which means you're probably not a dex-based build. You could be, but you're probably not. So your strength modifier does help here. And when you crit, you will bleed the target, so that's nice too. Notice you can cancel the spell early with a roar that does an intimidation check, kind of like Dazzling Display. But it's a one and done. It cancels the spell at that point. But that's fucking cool. That's a swift action, so you can capitalize on that shit. We'll say again, Shattered Defenses. You intimidated them with a spell, raw, and then club them to death with your weapon. That's fucking cool, right? Notice something else about this spell, though. As far as problems are concerned, once you cast this on yourself, you are definitely doing what's called a natural attack. And there's ways, of course, to buff that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there are some bad guys in the game where if you use a natural attack on them, you are taking damage. And you can't stop that shit other than canceling the spell, of course. So you don't have any control over whether you try to bite the target, is what I'm saying. You swing your weapon, and then you lunge back and lunge forward and take a big chunk out of their chest and maybe take acid or fire or whatever damage or disease, and you see the problem. So this kind of sucks in the fact that it gave you a natural attack. But I think we can still agree an extra attack that could possibly end the fight sooner is definitely worth having. Bone Fist. Remember I said we'd talk about something that buffs your natural weapons? Here you go. This is a team buff, no less. Amazing buff. You will take it, and again, you will love it because it gives you and your team for a decent amount of time, +1 natural armor, not enhancement. Natural armor. That's money, and that's sweet. And it also gives you and your team +2 damage to your natural weapons, and that includes unarmed strikes, by the way. Ignore the question mark there. I did test that earlier today. That does work. So if you're monking it up, or someone else on your team is that got this buff, they're doing an extra 2 to their punches. Now, why does this one, because again it buffs your natural weapons, why does this one not fall under the problems category that the last one did? This one didn't give you natural weapons, it just buffed your natural weapons. It was your dumbass that decided to use them in the first place. So this did not give you an attack like this one did. That's why it's not technically a problem, in my opinion. Again, it's just my way of looking at it. But again, you are right. You are more susceptible using unarmed strikes and natural weapons. But, again, that was your choice, not the spell's choice. Burst of Radiance. Another addition spell. This is amazing. Now you see we're getting into a lot of spells that the modders have added. This is an amazing level 2 spell for a couple really good reasons. One is AoE. It's not teammate friendly, but that's not that big of a deal, really. Save or suck spell, but not even. It's a save and something happens spell. So even if they make their save, reflex save, they're dazzled for 1 to 4 rounds. If they fail their save, they're blind for 1 to 4 rounds. You can see the appeal. But better than that, if they're evil and in the area of effect, even if they make the save, they still take 5d4 damage max, caster level, which means you can probably intensify the spell for 10d4 damage. That's a level 2 spell cast at level 3 now. It's doing some solid damage. And again, it's guaranteed damage, not like a reflex save to get out of it like those little ninja bastards like to do with fireball spell. No, this shit's going to hurt them. If they're evil, boom, you're on fire. And they might be blinded or dazzled at the very least. That's a solid fuck you spell. This is definitely an amazing upgrade. You definitely want this spell at least once. Path of Glory. A weird spell, let's just say it. You illuminate some dirt. The dirt is magic and it heals your team. Only your team, not the bad guy. So you can cast this in combat, so there's that. It's a 60-foot line, even though it says it's a burst. That's a lie. It's a line, like it says down here. The path of the is perpendicular to the way you're facing. So if, let's say, this is the teammate that I want to heal in combat, I'm way the fuck back here, I'm facing him, I click the dirt here, it'll go left and right, perpendicular to the line between me and where I clicked. The downside is if you try to click it under your feet, you could be a little off kilter. So instead of it going left and right like you're hoping for it to go, like this way, maybe you're just at a funny little angle, so now it's shooting like a line like this. And again, any of your teams, including you, stand on that thing every round at the start of your round, or their round, whoever's on it, they'll heal 1 health. And they'll do that for 1 round per level. If they get the full 20 rounds on that thing, they heal 20 hit points. 40 if you extend it. Now again, that's a 2 minute to 4 minute standing around doing fucking nothing. Would I do that? Fuck yeah, I would. If the fight's over, I'll fucking cast that spell. If I'm not worried about my buffs falling off, have my whole fucking team stand on that shit. I go fix myself a sandwich and come right the fuck back. Oh, looks, everyone's capped off with a nice 20 or 40 extra healing. Time to get back to the fights. Let's go do it. That's cheap. For a level 2 spell, that's not bad healing. And again, to put it in frame of reference, what was the Cure Moderate Runes going to heal you for? 2d8 plus 10, right? For the same level, it's a level 2 spell. 2d8 plus 10. Let's say that was maximized. Let's just do best case scenario. So 16 and 10. So that's 26 healing. This could heal you and the whole fucking team for 20. So again, that spell was only going to heal one person, the other one, for 16 and 10. So 26. So this is clearly more healing, more bang for your buck, if you will. Would I use it all the time? No, but I'd definitely keep 1 or 2 launching around in my pocket. Consecrate and Desecrate, that's the next 2. And then they're basically the same, but in reverse. This one's actually a very cool addition. This, again, puts down the target glowing area, so it's obvious that it's a buffed area. What does this one do? Consecrate basically allows no summoning or creating of undead in that area. So if you're fighting like a necrolord son of a bitch in the game, where you know he's like, fight my mummy bastards, you son of a bitch. No, you slap that shit down first if you're lucky enough to. He can't summon in that circle. Now, I don't know if that means he has to leave the circle to summon, or if he can just like stay in the circle and cast his summonings outside the circle and they show up, and then they wander in. But at the very least, they're not summoning at your goddamn feet. So that's at least something. And that's cool, and of course that's applicable for you too, so it's a penalty for you technically as well. Notice that any undead in it are at a disadvantage, so they have a penalty to their attack rolls, damage rolls, and saves, and that includes Jaethal, She's undead, maybe even you if you're undead, and any undead that you summon. So you can see the problem here, but the real nice sacred bonus to your DC check if you're trying to channel positive energy to damage undead. Again, be careful with hurting Jathel on that shit, or your undead horde. But if you're fighting undead, that's an amazing fuck you to them when you do the AoE damage undead ability. +3 to that check. That's pretty nice. And again, I can see the appeal of having a spell like this. It lasts a good long time, but it's stationary, so who cares about that? But again, a couple minute buffs is at least all you need to have some fun in here. Then Desecrate, the opposite, is just everything you'd want it to be. Any of your undead now get a bonus to their attack rolls, damage rolls, and saving throws. Again, that includes Jathel and maybe even you, and certainly any pets that you summon. It's a profane bonus if you're trying to use your channel negative energy, assuming you're an evil cleric, or at least a cleric that damages people. So basically inflict light wounds is kind of like your go-to. Then you can channel negative energy and damage living targets or heal undead. If you damage living targets, there's a DC check. Now you got a +3 to that, so that's nice. That's that profane bonus. And notice this better part. Instead of blocking summoning of undead into the circle, anytime you create or animate dead in the circle, you can actually animate more than normal. You can control more, which is again something that they've added. On that, animate dead lesser, new spell added, again updated, in that it needs diamond dust. Same with animate dead, the one that is part of the vanilla version of the game. They changed that to need even more diamond dust. And the best part of the change, in my opinion, is they've increased the duration of these to finally be something fucking useful. Downside of these ones, the same with animate dead, I'm fairly certain they will not zone with you, which means if you're going from floor 1 to floor 2, the pets don't come with you. So that's kind of sucky. And certainly if you hop on the overland map, even if they have enough duration to get you from where you're going to, like, say, Oleg's, they still won't be with you. They don't travel. But it's okay for what they're needed for in a dungeon. These are nice. And this one's cool in that you only summon one at a time. But funnier than that was the other day I found out that first, also, the other thing they added is you need a dead body to animate the dead. It's funny because now you're literally not resurrecting, but animating the corpse of something you just killed and watching him kill all his buddies. So they're, I'm assuming, horrified by this, which is just funny to me. But better than that, the type of guy you animate to get your animate dead determines the type of undead monster you get. The monster is the same stats. It's just, well, you can get a ranged attacker or a melee attacker. Well, which one do you get? Well, was he a ranged attacker in life? Yeah. Well, you're getting the ranged attacking skeleton. He throws like stones at the bad guys. If you want to get all ranged attackers, just only animate the dead from guys that were shooting you at a distance. If you want to have all melee skeletons, only resurrect or animate, I keep saying resurrect, animate the guys that were melee attackers in life. And you'll get melee skeletons with like a little short sword. They'll go up and attack melee style all the time. It was just fucking funny to me that I can have like an entire armada of ranged attacking skeletons, even though they suck. So what? It's just funny to see like 17 stones go flying at the bad guys. And I thought that was cool. And I love the 10-minute duration buff because it used to be 1 round per level, and that shit's just wrong. So this is cool. This is what the undead spells were supposed to be like. Now I know they changed animate dead, but I don't think they changed create undead, which is a bummer, because create undead is another one of those where their skeletons are pretty fucking good. Like you get like a bone guardian or a something else like an attacker type. Also there's like one that's a defense and one that's like offense, but the point is that there's still, I think, 1 round per level, and that sucks. But at least by the time you get those guys, you have like probably like 10, 12, 16 levels under your belt, so that you have at least a good duration pet. But I'd rather be, even if it was just 1 minute per level, that would have been some kind of an upgrade. But it definitely makes the Necro Lord in me scream out that this is the way I want to go. But with that, that's all we have for you today. Hey, keep it to almost 2 hours. That's better than it has been. It's been usually 3. But this is going to be the new format for these upcoming videos. And I already got the clips cut out for the pictures of the spells for level 3 and 4 already. I just need to put the slide together. So in another day or 2, you'll probably see that next video posted. And then we'll finish up with 5 and 6, of course. And then decide from there which other caster to go to. Again, I may just go right back into Magus simply because I know I'm going to play them and I want to see what new spells that they have. And they got some really cool new ones that you're going to want to hear about, like Blade Tutor is one of my favorites. Blade Dash and Greater Bladed Dash, or Maze Balls is for a Magus build as well. So I'd like to get into those. So unless I have a suggestion after War Priest, that's probably where we're going to go. We'll do like the Inquisitor, we'll do, there's an Inspector, I want to say, and anything that's basically caster level up to level 4 to level 6, like the subcasters is what I call them. So like paladins and rangers and like the blood ragers and stuff like that. I'll probably do videos like this for all those guys. Why? Because I will do the clerics and wizards and druids and whatnot eventually. But again, if I'm covering most of their spells by covering 1 through 3, 1 through 4, 1 through 6 or whatever from these builds, then when I do 1 through 6 for the cleric, for example, I can say, hey, you've already seen that in the other video. Go watch that video. It's a good video. And then just marshal through 1 through 6 pretty quick and just give my, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad. And then officially start the video with level 7, 8, and 9, the stuff that you wanted to see. Of course, I will check to make sure that there's not a spell that, for example, the cleric has that the war priest doesn't. It's possible. It's not likely, but it is a distinct possibility they have a spell that doesn't fall within the purview of that. I know mages, for example, have spells that wizards don't get. Not many, but there's some. And vice versa. There's spells that the magus get, or the wizard get, that the magus will never touch. So again, I'll try to point those things out to you guys in the future. But this is what I'm going to go with until I start thinking of other builds to do. And on that, again, I'm sure I've missed some people's builds. I apologize. Again, always post down below. I take no offense to it unless you're a dick. Feel free to say, hey, have you worked on this build? Or just remind me, I'm still waiting for that build. Did you forget? Because chances are I have, or I lost the paper. And I'd like to catch up on all those too in the future. So post down below anytime you see these videos if you haven't seen what you wanted. And again, I still will work on builds in the future, even though I'm looking for work now. I still will put these types of videos together. And again, this is easier for me because I don't have to theory craft so much. I can just make the video, the PowerPoint presentation, and just think about how I would use the spells, practice it a couple times, and then before you know it, I have a video up for you guys, okay? But with that, my name is Brother Mute. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Tell me what you guys think of this playthrough style and this video style down below, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye now.